Chapter 1137. No one knew what had happened in the dark. The conflict between the bloodline of the ancient king and the bloodline of the old king did not break out as expected. Instead, it disappeared without a trace, as if nothing had happened. The deaths of Qi Zhen and Yun Lan had been quietly revealed. This was naturally very abnormal, but now no one was in the mood to continue investigating the secret between the two parties. Because the heaven's chosen stage was about to descend, within the territory of a nightmare beast, the 10 parties that hunted the most nightmare beasts would obtain the qualifications to enter the heaven choice stage. After passing the test of the ancestral land, 3 would be chosen to enter the nightmare ancestral land. Even though the young beast hunting test had been interrupted due to the war with the young beast tribe, the hunting ranking was still there. The top 10 Nightmare clans were preparing with all their might to try their luck. Both the ancient king and the old king had lost their successors. This might be their best chance. If they succeeded, the entire family would rise to power and wield the power of the nightmare race. They would then obtain unimaginable rewards. The Heaven Choice platform is a part of the ancestral land. After obtaining its approval, it will bring you into the space of the ancestral land. There is no other way to enter the ancestral land. Yin Weia looked at Qin Yu with a solemn expression. This is the final threshold before you. As long as you can cross it, you will become the new king of nightmares. His tone was resolute, without the slightest hesitation. Qin Yu had already thoroughly awakened his royal bloodline. After entering the ancestral land, he would immediately obtain recognition. Those that entered the ancestral land with him simply wouldn't have any chance to resist. Thus, in Yin Wuya's eyes, the heaven-chosen stage was the only obstacle that the old king's bloodline had to face. The ancient king's bloodline would definitely think of a way to prevent Qin Yu from obtaining recognition. This was because after stepping onto the Heaven's Choice altar, he would no longer be able to conceal his aura. He had already reported this matter to the clan leader, but what puzzled Yin Wuya was that the clan leader didn't say anything about it. He merely waved a hand and didn't mention it again. Perhaps the patriarch had already made arrangements, but Yin Wuya felt that he had to be serious and warned Qin Yu to prevent any accidents from occurring. And I understand. Qin Yu nodded calmly. Yin Wuya frowned and thought for a moment before asking, "Did the chief say something to you? If you can't tell me, then don't say it." Qin Yu bitterly smiled. He could somewhat guess what Yin Wuya was thinking, but the truth was that he really didn't feel any pressure entering the ancestral land. What was truly terrifying was after entering the ancestral land. There was no way to explain, and he didn't want to say anything. He simply nodded, as if saying, "You're right, but I really can't say anything." A smile appeared on Yin Wuya's face. I knew that the chief had made preparations. How could he not have thought of the key to seizing the throne? Okay, then I won't say much. This is the information I've collected about the heaven-chosen stage. If you don't understand anything, you can ask me. Qin Yu received the demon crystal and said, "Can I go back and take a look? I still have some matters to attend to." Yin Wuya instantly understood. "That's fine. You can just take it back. I'm free these next few days. If you don't know anything, feel free to ask me." Qin Yu expressed his thanks and left. Without further delay, he returned to his dwelling. After Qin Yu closed the door, he could clearly feel some subtle changes in the space he was in. This change was different from Qi Zhen's previous actions. Qin Yu couldn't clearly feel what the difference was, but there was no doubt that it had isolated the aura of the outside world from the outside world. Amidst the fluctuations, Marquis Qianjun stepped out. Qin Yu's eyes fell on him, and his pupils changed. Although the Marquis Qianjun in front of him had no flaws, Qin Yu could still sense that something was different. This wasn't the true Marquis Qianjun, but something similar to a projection avatar. Was he worried about the old royal patriarch who had already arrived? Besides this, Qin Yu couldn't think of any other possibility. His thoughts raced. He bowed. "Greetings, Marquis Qianjun." "No need to be so polite." Marquis Qianjun lightly said, "You and Qi Zhen are equals. You and I are the same." Qin Yu stood up. "Then this junior will have to offend you." "Marquis Qianjun, may I ask why you have come today?" Qi Jun and Marquis Qianjun didn't need to be mentioned in detail. But if it weren't for the fact that Qin Yu was currently cooperating with them, these two strange old fellows would have attacked him first. After all, as a product that existed outside of the rules, they would certainly be interested in Qin Yu's identity and origins. Qin Yu believed that Qi Jun and Marquis Qianjun both hoped that he could smoothly destroy the ancestral land, so they absolutely wouldn't care about his life or death. Thus, towards these two formidable old ghosts, Qin Yu was filled with dread, but he didn't respect them at all. Marquis Qianjun clearly didn't care about this. He looked at Qin Yu and directly said, "I came today to give you the crystal core." As he spoke, he took out a pitch-black ring that seemed to be forged from some unknown material and passed it to Qin Yu. Remember, the crystal core in this ring is a backup plan. You must not act rashly. Marquis Qianjun solemnly reminded him before handing the ring to him. Qin Yu nodded. Marquis Qianjun, rest assured that I know what is important and what is not. I will not joke around with my life or death. Marquis Qianjun raised his head and glanced in a certain direction. He subconsciously frowned and said, "I should go. Tell Qi Zhan that anything that happens in the ancestral land has nothing to do with me. This is all I can do." As he finished speaking, he didn't stay any longer. His figure moved, fusing into the ripples in space and vanishing from sight. In Qin Yu's perception, the strength that distorted space also faded away. In a courtyard of the blue tile courtyard, although it had been repaired, one could still see tiny cracks on the surface of the building. The old royal patriarch looked away. He lifted a hand and drank the tea in his cup. With a light pop, he placed the teacup on the table. That aura, just now, was incomparably obscure. If he hadn't been prepared beforehand, he would have never been able to sense it. But since it was intentional, no matter how obscure it would still leave behind some traces. He hadn't probed it, but that feeling was something that the old royal patriarch was certain he wasn't wrong. As he thought, this was the work of the will of the abyss. Qin Yu had concealed some things and hadn't said everything. But this wasn't important. Even if he was willing to speak, the old royal patriarch wouldn't want to know. If the will of the abyss attacked, even if he was just touched by the tiniest bit, there was a chance that he would fall into a vortex and eventually be destroyed. Many years ago, he had lived with death day and night. But now, he was still alive, and without accident, he would continue to live. The old royal patriarch didn't fear death at all. This was because the torment of his difficult existence had slowly worn away his fear of death. But he couldn't die yet. At the very least, before the old royal bloodline was born and a new guardian was born, he had to continue living. So, Qin Yu would continue to hide the things he wanted to hide. Through this matter, he had further confirmed his identity. A chess piece of the will of the abyss had fallen into this game. A great change was about to occur. Blue Sea bowed, his voice filled with reverence. Patriarch, rest assured that from this day forth, Blue Sea will marry into the clan. I will regard you all as my family, and I will not betray your trust today. If I were to disobey you, I would be rejected by the abyss. The ancient king patriarch had a calm expression. I naturally trust you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have chosen you as a candidate. He waved his hand and said, "Go. The Heaven's Choice platform will soon descend. The ancient king bloodline will fully support you in obtaining the qualifications to enter." Yes, Blue Sea bowed once more. Then he took several steps back and left. In the grand hall, another voice sounded out. "Patriarch, why did you choose him?" Then another demon spoke up. "Although Qi Zhan has died, there are still many outstanding juniors in my bloodline. Although Blue Sea is outstanding, he isn't one of us." The voices in the grand hall were filled with confusion and worry. But before this, not a single one of them had voiced any objections. This was the prestige and status of the ancient king patriarch. The ancient king patriarch lightly said, "I have my own plans for this matter. There is no need for all of you to say anything." He waved his hand, "Leave." "Yes, patriarch, we will bid our farewells." Calm figures began to withdraw from the grand hall. As their eyes met, they could all feel the confusion and helplessness in each other's eyes. Blue Sea. It was actually Blue Sea, let alone others. Even they, who could be considered peak characters of the ancient king bloodline, felt this result to be inconceivable. What was the patriarch thinking about? The grand hall emptied out, leaving behind only the ancient king patriarch. Deep in his calm and indifferent eyes, great waves began to appear. Qi Zhen should have become a king, but he had died prematurely. From that moment on, the chess game was completely messed up. Since that was the case, why not throw in another piece of chaos? They could also see just what kind of strength was hiding behind Blue Sea. To make the situation even more chaotic, they could also borrow the strength of the ancestral land to destroy the claws of some people. Did they really think that the Nightmare Clan was something they could covet? Ancestral land. The ancient king patriarch muttered to himself. After several breaths of time, he lightly laughed. There was bitterness, there was gloominess, but most of it was mockery. He was laughing at himself, and he was also laughing at those in his clan who were like him. The ancestral land of the Nightmare Clan was known as the foundation of their clan, a place that was envied and feared by all sides in the dark abyss. But even people like them felt awe and fear. They needed to use the hands of outsiders to probe it. What a joke. 3 days later, the heaven-chosen platform descended. It was really just an incomparably large stone platform. Every inch of its surface was covered with traces of the baptism of time. There were countless cracks, and the aura of the passing of time filled the air. With just a single glance, one could clearly feel the endless time it had experienced. In the skies above, the violent spatial fluctuations didn't dissipate with the arrival of the heaven-chosen platform. Instead, they became even more turbulent. They were like countless raging waves surrounding the heaven-chosen stage, forming a terrifying sealing barrier. The heaven-chosen platform came from a Nightmare Clan's ancestral land and was a part of it. Naturally, it was only open to the Nightmare Clan. No one else could enter. If they tried to force their way in, this terrifying spatial barrier would be enough to completely destroy them. Qinyu looked up. His eyes fell on the skies. Even though he was far away, he could still feel its boundless aura. And this aura, to a large extent, was because it covered an extremely large area, as if it covered the entire sky. A summoning strength came from the heaven-chosen platform, covering Qinyu within. As time passed, it became increasingly strong. He had an intuition that as long as he willed it, he could rely on this summoning strength to be pulled into the heaven-chosen platform. Yin Huia took a deep breath. He said in a low voice, "Qinyu, today I will accompany you into the heaven-chosen platform. Struggle with everything you have. As long as I don't die, I will ensure your safety." Qinyu nodded, not saying anything. Yin Huia laughed. "Let's go." Shua. Their figures suddenly vanished from where they stood, causing several faint ripples in the air like stones falling into water. Chapter 1138. Qinyu never imagined that from the moment he entered the Heaven's Choice platform, the competition would directly enter its climax without any delay. But what happened afterwards proved that he had underestimated the strength gathered in the struggle for the throne of the Nightmare race. The top 10 rankings of the Nightmare Beast Hunt were led by the Ancient King, the Old King, and the New Faction. Although the other 7 factions were a bit weaker, they were still powerful influences within the Nightmare race. As everyone gathered on the Heaven's Choice platform, an invisible repulsive strength erupted, pushing Yin Huia and the other guards to the edge. Then, a stirring strength was released from the Heaven's Choice platform. It was able to stimulate the bloodline aura of everyone on the final list of 10. Simple and crude, but effective. The strength of the various abyssal races was established upon the foundation of their bloodline. On the Heaven's Choice platform, the 3 people with the strongest bloodlines would be allowed to enter the ancestral land. Of course, this was only a simple overview of the process. In reality, it was impossible to simply select the top 10. Without further ado, the bloodline aura of the 10 people on the Heaven's Choice platform began to break out from their bodies. Bang, bang, bang. Numerous blood-colored pillars appeared above their heads, shooting straight into the sky like smoke signals. wantonly releasing their own powerful pressure. This was the manifestation of the strength of their bloodline within their bodies. As time passed, the blood-red columns continued to grow taller and taller. 10 feet, 30 feet, 50 feet. Yin Wuya was expressionless, but his fists were clenched tightly within his sleeves. Even now, the matter of Qin Yu awakening his royal bloodline was a top secret that no one knew of. But soon this secret would be exposed. Without a doubt, the first to fall out with him would be the ancient king bloodline. Tilting his head slightly, Yin Wuya glanced at the Seven Kills clan elder out of the corner of his eye. It was still this bastard who came today. Although Yin Wuya was confident that he could crush the Seven Kills clan elder to the ground, these bastards would not give him a fair chance to fight. He had to cripple one of them first in order to deter the others. Otherwise, even if he had 3 heads and 6 arms, he still wouldn't be able to protect Qin Yu. And without a doubt, Seven Kill was the best candidate. Thinking of this, Yin Wuya licked his lips, a cruel expression on his face. The Seven Kill elder's face was livid. He felt like he was being stared at. Why was this old bastard looking at him like that? The Heaven Chosen platform was ranked according to bloodline, and the top 3 would be allowed to enter the ancestral land. But in fact, after being ranked, one had to be strong enough to survive until the Heaven Chosen platform and return to the ancestral land. The period in between, he was known as the Bloody Period. What wouldn't he do for the throne? For countless years, the succession of kings had changed. Brothers had turned against each other. Husbands and wives had broken up. Siblings had killed each other. What kind of plot had not happened before? Death was a common occurrence. As time passed, the blood-colored pillars above the heads of the 10 cultivators soon reached a height of 10 zhong. At this moment, someone's speed began to slow down. He roared unwillingly, but it was to no avail. The face of a demon guard was filled with anger. His race had chosen a competitor for the throne, but the blood-colored pillar had stopped growing after reaching a height of 30 meters. He was ranked last. The 10-meter blood pillar was the threshold for the fight for the throne. If one did not reach this standard, they would not be qualified to fight for the throne at all. 110 feet was more than enough. But this result meant that he had almost no chance of entering the ancestral land. Soon, the blood pillars of the other competitors also stopped growing. Most of them were concentrated between 140 and 190 feet. In the end, the only ones whose blood pillars continued to grow and broke past 200 feet were Qin Yu, Blue Sea, and another unfamiliar young demon. And these 3 people represented the old king, the ancient king, and the new faction. At the edge of the heaven-chosen platform, the blood pillars stopped growing. The various demon guards all revealed complex expressions. Disregarding the new faction, even if Qi Zhen and Cloud Mist died, the Ancient King and Old King's candidates were still terrifyingly strong. The Ancient King's bloodline choosing Blue Sea had shocked countless people. As the city lord of Dark Peak City, Blue Sea's strength was already well known. Thus, no one was surprised that Blue Sea's blood energy and blood energy were able to form a blood pillar that exceeded 200 feet. But Qin Yu, in truth, this was also an unexpected result. No one thought that he would be the one to replace Cloud Mist. It had to be known that no one had truly investigated Qin Yu's origins. It wouldn't be too much to say that his background was unknown. The old king's bloodline had actually chosen him, and this junior's bloodline strength was truly astonishing. After the blood pillar broke 200 feet, it continued to grow. It was no weaker than Blue Sea and Shimo's. Shimo was one of the contenders for the throne that the new faction had chosen. The new faction was different from the Ancient King and Old King's factions. To sum it up simply, they were countless grassroots forces that had risen from the ashes. They had gathered together to fight for their own interests, and after a series of transformations, they had finally formed a giant faction. The Shi surname was not a famous family within the Nightmare race. For Shimo to be able to defeat so many competitors and obtain the new faction's nomination, there was no need to doubt his strength in all aspects. In the blink of an eye, the blood pillar broke 300 feet. then 400 feet, 500 feet. At this moment, the growth of the blood pillars above their heads finally slowed down. Yin Wuya frowned. A 500-foot blood pillar was absolutely astonishing. But for a fully awakened royal bloodline, this result was abnormal. There were clear records in the race that every royal bloodline that had been awakened in the past would break 1,000 feet. There had never been an exception. Could this be the arrangement that the patriarch had made ahead of time? He had concealed the fact that Qin Yu had awakened his royal bloodline. After entering the ancestral land, he, Blue Sea, and the new faction's Shimo would naturally not have a chance. The patriarch was indeed the patriarch. He could even tamper with the Heaven's Choice platform. He was simply too awesome. Yin Wuya let out a sigh of relief. Before he left today, he had already prepared for the worst. Even if he had to die, he would do his best to protect Qin Yu. But if he didn't have to risk his life, that would be for the best. How good was it to be alive? Who would want to die for no reason? That was a pervert. While Yin Wuya was rejoicing that he didn't have to risk his life, Qin Yu was muttering in his heart. That old fellow from the old royal family. After he had glared at Qin Yu and forced him to reveal his identity, he had disappeared like a transparent person. In fact, even after entering the Heaven's Choice platform, Qin Yu still hadn't seen him once. So Yin Wuya's idea that the patriarch was too awesome and had prepared beforehand was completely untrue. At this time, Qin Yu could clearly feel the surging blood energy within his body, as if it were stacking up in raging waves. But they were currently trapped in a membrane, and only a small opening had been made. As a result, the amount of bloodline aura that flowed out was limited. And now, this opening was constantly shrinking, causing the amount of bloodline aura that flowed out to become less and less. That was why the scene that Yin Wuya saw was that the pillar of blood above his head, Blue Sea, and Shimo's speed had slowed down almost at the same time. The Heaven's Choice platform was a part of the Nightmare Ancestral Land. In other words, the Ancestral Land was helping me hide my bloodline? What was the reason? Although he didn't know what kind of existence the old turtle in the Ancestral Land was, he could control the entire Nightmare tribe from within. Even Qi Zhen and Marquis, Thousand June were afraid of him. In fact, even powerful figures like the Old King and the Ancient King Patriarch had to maintain a certain distance from him. How could someone as powerful as him not know anything about the outside world? The new king that the old turtle had chosen was unsurprisingly Qi Zhen. But now he was dead, and Qin Yu had jumped out with the golden sign of awakening the royal bloodline above his head. How could the old turtle not notice Qin Yu? Could he not guess that he was a product that existed outside of the rules, and that he might represent danger? It was because of this that Qin Yu was puzzled. There was no reason for the other party to help him hide himself and smoothly enter the ancestral land. What he should be doing was thinking of a way to destroy Qin Yu, erasing any accidents or variables in the bud. As for who could enter the ancestral land in the end, as long as it wasn't Qin Yu, the result would likely be the same. The Nightmare King was still the Nightmare King. 600 feet. The pillars of blood above Blue Sea, Qin Yu, and Shimo's heads had nearly stopped growing. Without accident, this would be the final result for the three of them. There was no longer any suspense in the top three selections. The other 7 competitors and the demon guards all revealed gloomy expressions. They were strong, but their opponents were stronger, and not just by a little bit. There was a difference of at least 3 times. This represented a crushing defeat of absolute strength. Moreover, the Ancient King, the Old King, and the new faction were the 3 strongest giants of the Nightmare tribe. Now that the 3 sides shared the same interests, no one could stir up any waves. The outcome had been decided, but this was only the result of normal thinking and the normal progression of events. Accidents often occurred when the dust seemed to settle, when you felt a sense of helplessness and unwillingness, when you were about to accept your fate. This was because Qin Yu's confusion was correct. The Heaven Choice platform had helped him conceal his bloodline, but they hadn't thought to conceal it until the end. The result was that the membrane that wrapped around his bloodline aura suddenly vanished from Qin Yu's perception. That's right, there had been no warning at all. It had suddenly vanished, as if it had never existed before. The result was that Qin Yu's bloodline aura wildly erupted. Thus, bang, everyone seemed to hear a thunderclap in their ears. An invisible pressure rushed towards them, causing their heartbeats to stop for a moment before rapidly accelerating. Above Qin Yu's head, the 600-foot column of blood seemed as if it had been swallowed up by several 110 complete supplement pills. It began to rapidly rise. In the blink of an eye, it broke through to 700 feet. But this wasn't the end, but the beginning. 800 feet, 900 feet, 1,000 feet. Yun Wuya's eyes widened. He looked at the blood pillar in front of him. In just several breaths of time, it rapidly grew. What was going on? The patriarch had already made arrangements. How did things turn out like this in the blink of an eye? Yun Wuya's lips twitched as he looked at the blood pillar that didn't show any signs of stopping even after breaking through 1,000 feet. He bitterly smiled at his heart. It seemed that one really couldn't dream of being beautiful or handsome. One had to fight with their life on the line. No matter what, they couldn't avoid it. The entire Heaven Choice platform fell deathly silent. Everyone's eyes widened as they looked at the rapidly growing blood pillar above Qin Yu's head, breaking through 1,000 feet. It had to be known that records of the royal bloodline weren't limited to the old king's bloodline. In truth, this wasn't a secret at all. Thus, everyone only needed a glance to guess what was going on. Everyone's eyes widened, their minds shaken to the extreme. Yinlan had already died. In front of everyone, he had been killed by Qi Zhan on the spot. There were many nightmare demons who had personally witnessed this scene, so it couldn't be fake. But what was going on with Qin Yu? A blood pillar breaking 1,000 feet. This was a result that only someone with a fully awakened royal bloodline could have. And now, the blood pillar above Qin Yu's head was still madly growing. It didn't seem like it was going to stop at all. This could only mean that his bloodline was very, very strong. So strong that it was even more exaggerated than a completely awakened royal bloodline. The old king's bloodline had 2 royal bombs? Impossible. Just as this thought appeared, it was suppressed. This sort of thing had never happened in the history of the nightmare demon race. Otherwise, did they really think that awakened royal bloodlines were like carrots on the side of the road that could be casually picked up? Everyone's eyes kept moving back and forth between Yun Wuya and the 7 Kills Elder. Half of it was admiration, half of it was sympathy. Although there was no evidence, there were some things that didn't need concrete evidence. Everyone just needed to be free to judge. Although they didn't know the specifics of what had happened, the general conclusion was that the old king's bloodline had made a move faster and used a secondary chariot to directly exchange for the ancient king's royal bomb. If this was really the case, then the old king's bloodline's plan was so meticulous and long. It was simply amazing. Yin Lan was a chess piece on the surface, and Qin Yu was the true trump card. Even after so many years, he hadn't revealed the slightest flaw. If it weren't for the fact that he could no longer hide his bloodline aura after ascending the Heaven's Choice altar today, perhaps this matter wouldn't have been exposed. No. Everyone suddenly remembered that the blood pillar above Qin Yu's head had slowed down just now. It had nearly stopped growing at the same time as Blue Sea and Shiemo. Now, it seemed that the old king's bloodline had made some attempts to thoroughly conceal this matter. But looking at it now, their efforts had a certain effect. No, they had almost succeeded. If the old king's bloodline had really managed to deceive everyone, then once they entered the ancestral land, Qin Yu would surely have obtained the recognition of the new king and seized the throne. At that time, the old king's bloodline would be the ultimate victor. Everyone would be toyed with in the palm of their hands. And the one to be toyed with the most miserably would undoubtedly be the ancient king's bloodline. Qi Zhen had also awakened his royal bloodline and had the absolute qualifications to become the king of nightmares. Yet he had been defeated by Yun Lan, a chess piece, a slap to the face. This was the greatest slap to the face. The 7 Kill Clan elder's breathing became rough, and his eyes turned red. After his initial daze, he immediately figured out everything. In fact, he was even more comprehensive than everyone had imagined. No wonder they had managed to obtain top-secret information like Yunlan being a woman. This was simply a deliberate attempt to distract them and divert their attention so that they could perfectly conceal Qinyu. Because of this matter, the Seven Kill Clan elder had been disgraced and disgraced. Yun Wuya had taken this chance to cause chaos in the Council of Elders, leaving the ancient king's bloodline in a distressed state. They had no choice but to pay a great price in order to settle this matter. The Seven Kill Clan elder originally thought that this was the most shameful matter of his life, but now it seemed that he had been far too naive, because this matter was nothing more than a small and unremarkable link in the entire grand conspiracy. Including him, the entire ancient king's bloodline was kept in the dark and became a clown on stage. The old king's bloodline did indeed have a royal bloodline awaken, but it wasn't the dead cloud billow, but the Qinyu in front of them, a plot. All of this was a complete and utter plot. Chapter 1139. It wasn't as if he hadn't risked his life before. It wasn't as if he hadn't risked his life many times in his life. Yin Wuya coldly sneered. He glared back at Elder Seven Kill with an expression that said, "You guessed right, this is how things are. Little thing, I've tolerated you for a long time. If it weren't for the fact that I had so many misgivings these past few years, I would have taught you what it meant to be beautiful and red. If you want to turn hostile and attack me, then hurry up. I'll wait for you right here." Elder Seven Kill felt like his lungs were about to explode. This bastard Yin Wuya. How could he still be so arrogant and domineering at a time like this? Elder Seven Kill gritted his teeth so hard that they nearly shattered. Flames of anger roiled in his chest, almost roasting his heart, but he still endured it for now. With the situation today, he would definitely turn hostile. But with just him alone, there was an 80% chance he wouldn't be able to deal with Yin Wuya. This was the basic standard of a qualified old man. His anger could reach the heavens, but he wouldn't lose his basic rationality. If he rushed forward in a hot-headed manner, besides being abused, what good end would there be for him? Yin Wuya curled his lips and cursed, weakling. His voice wasn't loud, but it was loud enough for everyone to hear. Everyone looked at Elder Seven Kill and saw the blue veins popping out on his forehead. While they expressed their sympathy, they also couldn't help but be awed. In this situation, Yin Wuya wasn't panicking at all. No matter how tyrannical he was, he should be afraid of being ganged up on by us, right? After all, with the current situation, anyone who had even the slightest interest in the throne wouldn't just watch as Qinyu enter the ancestral land. If he went in and saw the level of his bloodline, how could anyone else compete? There was no room to play at all. Something was wrong. Something was wrong. Yin Wuya was such a sinister person. If he did this, then he must have already made preparations. Could it be that the bloodline of the ancient king had already planned this? That was right. They were well aware of the level of Qinyu's bloodline. If that was the case, how could he not have made preparations before coming to the Heaven Choice platform? Even an idiot would know that this was impossible. For a time, everyone's eyes were filled with uncertainty and hesitation. It was necessary to deal with the old king's bloodline. But who would go first? From the looks of things, it seemed like whoever showed up first would be the one to lose face. If they were to clash with the old king's trump card, they would be done for. The Seven Kill Elder's face turned even more ashen. His face was so dark that it seemed like it was about to drip water. That old bastard Yin Wuya was indeed very sinister. Just a simple provocation like that was enough to scare these people. His original plan had been to incite the guards of the other clans to attack Yin Wuya together. No matter how strong Yin Wuya was, he was just one person. If he was beaten to the ground, all he could do was passively take a beating. But in the end, before he could even make a move, Yin Wuya had more or less blocked off this path. And yet, Elder Seven Kills did not dare to take the risk. What if that was really the case? He had taken the initiative to attack, but Yin Wuya had taken care of him. Wouldn't that mean that he had worked so hard for someone else? Furthermore, that sneaky look from earlier on was way too King scary. Elder Chisha's anger was instantly quelled by quite a bit. Now that he thought about it, he was still a little scared. If that was all there was to it, then Yun Wuya's plan was undoubtedly very successful. Intimidating these people would also be able to buy them a lot of time. But the crux of the matter was that Qin Yu's strength didn't allow it. Bang! Above his head, the column of blood continued to expand, soon breaking through a terrifying height of 2,000 feet. 200 feet and 600 feet was a difference of 3 times. 600 feet and 2,000 feet were a bit more than 3 times. Although the numbers seemed about the same, the base number was different. The visual effect was far too different. The terrifying aura that erupted from the center of the Heaven's Choice stage was so strong that it left one's heart racing. Even Yun Wuya and the others who were far away at the edge of the stage could feel a formidable suppression. His lips twitched. He thought to himself, "Qin Yu, please don't be so flashy again. No matter how fierce I am, I can't withstand such torment." But in truth, this was only the beginning. This was because the column of blood above Qin Yu's head did something even more outrageous. It began to recklessly crush the blood columns above Blue Sea, Shima, and the others. That's right, crush wasn't wrong. Rather, it was more appropriate. As for the candidate whose blood column had just reached 110 feet, the blood column above his head was as fragile as an egg. He was the first to shatter. His entire body seemed to suffer a heavy blow. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face paled. His aura instantly withered. His eyes widened as he stubbornly stared at Qin Yu. Within his fear, there was also endless hatred and resentment. Then, another competitor whose blood column reached 130 feet followed in the footsteps of the first in less than a breath of time. With a cracking sound, the blood column shattered. Then a third, a fourth, all the way until there was a 7th person. In the blink of an eye, besides Blue Sea and Shima, all the other competitors on the Heaven's Choice stage had their blood columns destroyed. The entire process of crushing was like a hot knife through butter. There was almost no pause. Everyone lined up and died together. As for the blood column above Qin Yu's head that was over 2,000 feet high, there wasn't even a single ripple on its surface before it was completely swept away. Qin Yu, you dare? Yin Wuya, your old king's bloodline has gone too far. No matter how strong you are, you still dare to deliberately injure others. Unforgivable. The demon guards at the edge of the Heaven's Choice stage roared out. Their eyes widened as they glared at Yun Wuya, as if they would spit out flames. This bastard, he had gone too far. Kacha! Kacha! There was a series of cracking sounds. The angry roars in the air seemed to be silenced, quickly fading away. The blood columns above Blue Sea and Shima seemed to withstand a terrifying pressure. They fiercely shook and countless cracks appeared. Their complexions paled. As they looked at Qin Yu, their eyes were filled with shock and ice cold. The strength of Qin Yu's bloodline had far surpassed their expectations. Because of this, the two of them were incomparably sure that they absolutely could not allow him to enter the ancestral land. Blue Sea turned his head to look at Shima. In the next moment, the blood column above his head shattered. It wasn't that it was crushed, but that he had voluntarily stopped releasing his bloodline aura. The result was the same, but if he let go of his own initiative, he could reduce the damage he received to the lowest degree. Admiration flashed in Shima's eyes. Although he had also thought of this, there was still a trace of hesitation in his heart. He wasn't able to be as decisive as Blue Sea. After all, to voluntarily stop releasing his bloodline aura was, strictly speaking, to give up the qualifications to compete on the Heaven's Choice stage. Taking a deep breath, the blood column above Shima's head exploded. The blood in his chest violently shook, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Giving up on the Heaven's Choice stage was a risk. But if everyone lost, what about the blood columns above their heads? In that case, the selection this time was obviously invalid. Of course, the first condition to achieve this was to eliminate Qin Yu. If he was here, then he would be the only candidate allowed to enter the ancestral land. The throne would naturally be his. To use the blood columns above his head to eliminate the qualifications to compete was truly domineering. In fact, This was something that had never happened before in the history of the nightmare race. But if one was too strong, it was easy to break. If one was too strong, there was a real possibility that they would snap off their own heads. At this moment, the pale-faced seven-kill clan elder couldn't help but applaud and laugh for Qin Yu's actions. Good, this was far too good. Originally, the demon guards of the various families had been hesitant, not willing to be the first to attack. But now, everyone had been forced into a dead end. They had no choice. Otherwise, they would have to surrender the throne to the old king's bloodline. Two nightmare kings had been born from the same family. Without accident, a brand new family with strength comparable to the ancient king's bloodline would be born. The resulting changes would have a strong impact on the situation of the entire nightmare tribe. Too many people's interests would be harmed. After all, the rise of a giant that stood above all others would inevitably stand atop the corpses of countless powerful existences at the same level. And today, the 10 great families on the Heaven's Choice stage were all included in this list. The new faction's guardian today was a thin, middle-aged man. His hair was messy and scattered, and the space between his eyebrows was black on the left and pure white on the right. What was even more strange was that as he looked up, his left eye turned pure white, and his right eye turned pitch black. Black and white hair was the name of the new faction's guardian. No one knew the specific details of his rise, and his true level of strength was also a secret. But to this day, every demon that fought with him had perished. This person was one of the peak powerhouses of the new faction. In the legends, it was said that he could fight with a king. The new faction that rose from the bottom had the weakest foundation and did not have a strong network of connections. The reason why they were able to stand toe-to-toe with the ancient king and the old king was because their peak combat strength was strong enough. An extremely dangerous aura was released from the black and white hair's body. His intuition locked onto Yun Wuya, and his expression became extremely serious. Not entering the king realm, but having strength comparable to the Abyss King was a difficult path that countless experts of the Abyss had walked for millions of years under the restrictions of the Abyss will. Everyone's path was different, but as long as one stepped into it, they could reach the level of a nameless true king and possess the might of a true king. Yin Wuya was at the edge of this threshold and was only half a step away from truly stepping onto this path, and the black and white hair should be slightly stronger than him. It could be said that his entire person had already stepped onto this path. But for some reason, the black and white hair's aura was not complete, causing his strength to be lacking, and he had not reached the nameless true king realm. Today, every demon on the Heaven's Choice stage, including the 7 Kills clan elder, was an absolute powerhouse of the nightmare race. But the only one that could truly make Yin Wuya feel fear was the black and white hair. And now, he could no longer restrain himself and had chosen to attack. The 7 Kills clan elder coldly said, "Yin Wuya, do you really think that the old king's bloodline can act recklessly? Today, I will make you pay the price." He took a step forward, and a terrifying killing intent erupted from his body, rumbling towards Yin Wuya. Take advantage of his weakness to take his life. The black and white hair attacking was undoubtedly the best chance to do so. He absolutely could not miss it. Killing Yin Wuya to dispel the hatred in his heart and cutting off the old king's bloodline was the second. But the most fundamental goal was to cut off any possibility of Qin Yu stepping into the ancestral land. A competitor for the throne who had lost the protection of the demon race could only die without a grave. Chapter 1140. Hold on, Yin Wuya shouted out loud. He lifted a hand and took out the black token. Black and white hair, you must recognize this. If you join forces with these people, I will immediately use it on you. The black and white hair man was expressionless. Do you think I will be afraid? Yin Wuya shook his head. No, I am well aware of your strength. You are far stronger than me. There is a high chance I will be the one killed. The black and white hair man lightly said, "The one who will die will be you." Yin Wuya said, "But you will also be injured." After a brief pause, he looked straight at Yin Wuya and his voice became even lower. Knowing that I will die, even I don't know what kind of strength I can erupt with. You will not be able to escape unscathed. In today's situation, if I am injured, do you think someone will take the chance to attack me? Even if they can't kill you, kicking the new faction out of the picture isn't impossible. After all, the new faction has risen far too quickly. They have many enemies in the open and in the dark. The black and white hair man frowned. He looked at him. What are you trying to say? Yin Wuya snapped his fingers. Simple. Neither of us will interfere in what happens next. Let these juniors deal with it themselves. The 7-kill tribe elder coldly laughed, interrupting him. Yin Wuya, stop with your glib tongue. Are you trying to delay for time? Let me tell you. Bang. His voice suddenly stopped, and he was sent flying backwards. Yin Wuya expressionlessly withdrew his fist. 7-kill, if you dare to say another word, I will immediately use the black token and kill you at all costs. Bastard. The 7-kill elder felt like his lungs were about to explode. This old bastard Yin Wuya, he was clearly at an absolute disadvantage. So why did he dare to be so arrogant and attack him? But the strength of this fist was far too strong. The 7-kill elder's chest violently shook, and the taste of blood filled his nostrils. His anger soared to the heavens, and his heart trembled. Ignoring the furious expression on the 7-kill clan elder's face, Yin Wuya's gaze swept across the surroundings. Of course, if any of you have any objections, feel free to voice them. There is only one black token, and this old man can only kill one person. It all depends on which of you is more selfless and willing to sacrifice yourself to help others. Everyone stiffened. Everyone was well aware of Yin Wuya's strength. Besides the black and white hair man, who could guarantee they would be his match? Usually, there would be some conflicts and both sides would have some scruples. In a situation where there was room for leeway, it was not a big problem to fight a few rounds. But now, it was very clear that Yin Wuya was prepared to put his life on the line. Once the black badge was activated, someone would definitely die, and it would not end until someone died. The air was dead silent. The 7-kills elder roared in his heart. It's here again. That damned Yin Wuya. He only had these 2 tricks up his sleeves. One was shameless, and the other was desperate. However, these 2 moves had miraculous effects each time. Looking at their expressions, it was obvious that they were frightened. Most importantly, the black and white haired man's attitude had already wavered. Damn it, my plan to kill Yin Wuya is going to fail again. But now, Elder Chisha seemed to have forgotten that he was also one of the people who was stunned. All right, I agree. The black and white hair man took a step back, his tone indifferent. You all heard it. If you want the throne, then fight for it yourself. At the center of the Heaven's Choice stage, the people whose blood pillars had dissipated all looked at Chinyu, their eyes filled with icy, killing intent. Yin Wuya had used his life on the line to delay all of the devil guards. But so what? With the 9 of them attacking, could it be that they still couldn't kill Chinyu? As long as he died, the selection would restart. Blissey's lips suddenly moved. Beside him, Mo frowned. The 2 of them exchanged sound transmissions before glancing at each other and nodding. It was like in this simple exchange, the 2 of them had reached some sort of agreement. In the next moment, the 2 of them stepped forwards. Bluesey was the first to speak. Everyone, if Chinyu does not die, the old king's bloodline will inevitably rise. You and I cannot stay out of this. Today, Mo and I promise that no matter who kills Chinyu, no matter who obtains the throne in the end, we will protect one of them. The interests of our race will not be harmed in any way. Mo lightly said, That's right, this is our promise. At the edge of the Heaven's Choice stage, the eyes of the devil guards who had been forced to stand on the sidelines after Yin Wuya risked their lives all brightened. It was important to know one's own limits. Unless Chinyu, Blue Sea, and Mo were eliminated together, the throne would have nothing to do with their families. As for whether or not they could accomplish this, unless the 3 of them lost their heads and started a chaotic battle, then there was a small chance that they would be the fishermen that reaped the benefits. As for the possibility of that happening, it was almost negligible. The old king's bloodline would rise and form a super strong, ancient king-level influence. This was something that they absolutely could not allow. This was the basis for their cooperation. With this as a foundation, Blue Sea and Shimo's promises were particularly weighty. After all, once Chinyu was eliminated, the new king would most likely be one of them. Once they thought this through, there was no need to say what decision they would make. The various devil guards nodded towards the competitors they had chosen, indicating that they would agree. Chinyu had completely awakened his royal bloodline, so his strength was inevitably tyrannical. But no matter how strong he was, could he block the combined attacks of the other 9? Death was certain, so when they made their decision, the various families had no intention of hiding it. There was no need to worry about someone who was doomed to die. As for the old king's bloodline, humph, they were indeed powerful, but once the new king succeeded the throne, the old king's bloodline would likely cease to exist. At that time, it would be difficult for them to even protect themselves, so why would they want to retaliate against them? How laughable! Yin Weiyao looked at the center of the Heaven Choice platform. Blue Sea, Shimo, and the others had surrounded Chinyu, and his complexion became incomparably ugly. But forcing the black and white-haired man, the 7 Kill Clan elder, and the others to not interfere was already the limit of what he could do. It was impossible for them to help him any further. Chinyu, this is all your own mess. You can't blame me for this. Young people, it's understandable that you like to show off, but your show is just too big. This is all I can do. Whether you live or die will depend on yourself. The 3,000-foot blood column reflected in everyone's eyes. It was truly boundless and majestic, stirring up the skies above the Heaven Choice platform and emitting a deep, rumbling sound. Standing below, Chinyu didn't feel any pride after showing off at all. Instead, he frowned, a helpless expression on his face. The hostility that the ancestral land had towards him was truly strong. They actually wanted to use such a method to kill him in advance. As he swept his gaze across the surroundings, he could see many ice-cold eyes filled with a violent, killing intent. You could understand what they were feeling. After all, even the blood column above their heads had been crushed, cutting off any possibility of them chasing after the throne. This was a true, irreconcilable enmity. But understanding was understanding. Towards those that wanted to kill him, Yu's attitude never changed. If you want to kill me, then I will kill you, right or wrong. I was right. Killing you is natural. I was wrong. Killing you is natural. If he didn't even have this sort of mentality, then how many people had he killed these past years? Did they really deserve to die? His heart had long since been tormented to the point of collapse. However, how to kill them was a problem. Of the 9 demons in front of him, the only ones Chinyu feared were Blue Sea and Shimo. As for the others, they might have been too arrogant to say that they were chopping vegetables, but it really wasn't too difficult. Luckily, given the current situation, Blue Sea and Shimo definitely wouldn't attack first in order to avoid being injured. As Yu's thoughts raced, the blood column above his head finally stopped growing. In the next moment, it began to rapidly collapse. No, that wasn't the right way to describe it. It should be that it was rapidly shrinking at the speed of collapse, forming a mark. From the outside, it looked like a miniature blood column. With a whoosh, it fell directly between Yu's eyebrows. Little by little, a halo of light flowed on the surface of the imprint. When Zhang Xian's gaze fell on it, he suddenly felt a pressure on his mind. Dignified, solemn, subconsciously awed, this mark represented that Yu had passed the selection and obtained the approval of the ancestral land. Rumble, above the Heaven's Choice stage, a storm was brewing in the sky. A huge black vortex was rapidly forming. This vortex was the passageway to the ancestral land, and the time before it completely condensed would be the bloody moment mentioned earlier. Under normal circumstances, 3 people would appear. Once they obtained the approval of the ancestral land, they would be able to enter the final struggle for the throne. The final victor would be the new king of nightmares. What about the others who were excluded? Unless the disparity in strength was too great, they would definitely be unwilling. Or it would be more accurate to say that as long as the disparity in strength wasn't so great that it left one in despair, there would always be someone willing to take the risk. The method was simple and cruel. Kill off the person who occupied a spot. Then, a vacancy would appear and they would have another chance. The Heaven's Choice stage was the selection of the ancestral land. At the same time, it was also a struggle for the competitors for the throne. Unwilling to be defeated? Then make your move. Let the blood of your opponent dye the crown on your head red. And today, there was only one spot to kill Chinyu. This was the only thought that existed in the hearts of the 9 competitors. Kill. The competitor at the top of the 110-foot blood column was the first to attack. In truth, even if Chinyu was killed, he still wouldn't be able to obtain the approval of the ancestral land. But Blue Sea and Shimo's promise had moved his heart. As long as he could kill Chinyu, he would have performed a great merit for the family. In the future, the position of patriarch would be within reach. He no longer dared to dream about the throne. Then, becoming the patriarch and becoming a tyrant that dominated his own territory would be his highest goal in life. The blood pillar was 3,000 feet high. Chinyu's strength was tyrannical, but the blood pillar and his true strength weren't directly proportional. That's right, the strength of the abyssal races was established upon their bloodline. But what the Heaven's Choice stage stimulated was the potential of their bloodline. Even though Chinyu had awakened his royal bloodline, there was still a massive disparity between him and the peak strength that matched it. Otherwise, he would have already obtained the approval of the Abyss and become the Nightmare King. Everyone here was at the Demon Commander level. Even if you were strong, those that could enter the Heaven's Choice stage today were once proud prides of heaven. In terms of strength, no one would cower. So what if he was Chinyu? They might be able to kill him. Whoosh! The air was torn apart, emitting an ear-piercing sound. The demonic light that shot out from the competitor's body was actually crimson red. It drew a long and sharp arc behind him. It was like a long saber was howling downwards. Wild, tyrannical, unexcelled in the world. The air was torn apart. Space violently shook. Before it even fell, Chinyu could already feel its destructive aura. He sighed inwardly. It seemed that he had underestimated the strength of the Nightmare Demon race's younger generation powerhouses. But this didn't seem to have much effect on the result. Chinyu stepped forwards. Wild demonic energy erupted, instantly forming a massive mass of black fog that submerged his figure. Within the blood-red saber, the competitor's eyes flashed with a sharp, killing intent. "Stop playing tricks, break for me." Bang! The blood-red saber instantly submerged, cutting apart the black fog formed from demonic energy. A long opening was left behind, but this opening instantly healed. Then, there was a deathly silence. The competitor that rushed in was like a stone that fell into the water. After several ripples, everything returned to tranquility. The entire Heaven's Choice stage fell into a deathly silence. Countless eyes stubbornly stared at the black fog. Their pupils violently shrank, revealing endless shock and disbelief. Chapter 1141. Although he was the weakest among them, it didn't mean that he couldn't withstand a single blow. On the contrary, those who were qualified to be elected to compete for the Nightmare King's position today were at least the elites of their respective clans. Perhaps they had met each other before, or perhaps they hadn't, but they had at least heard of each other, so they had a rough idea of what was going on. But it was precisely this young expert that they were aware of, who disappeared in the blink of an eye after entering the black fog. In order to accomplish this, it had to be an absolute suppression of strength. Chinyu, how could he be so strong? Something was wrong. There was definitely something wrong. Staring at the black mist before him, Zhang Xian had no idea what had happened to Blood Pillar 11, but given the current situation, he could at least make sense of it. If they wanted to kill Chinyu, they couldn't expect him to show mercy at this time, right? Humph, everyone knows this logic. Their original plan was to join forces to kill Chinyu and then talk about other things. Who would have thought that the situation would change in the blink of an eye? Now, let's not talk about whether or not Qin Yu would be killed. The first thing they thought about was whether or not they could survive. Blood Pillar 11 didn't even make a splash before he was finished. If it were them, how strong could they be? All right, maybe it would splash, but the final result would most likely be the same. The remaining competitors for the throne suddenly felt a great pressure rise in their hearts. But time waited for no one. Once the channel was completely opened, the Heaven's Choice platform would bring Qin Yu into the ancestral land. As the saying goes, fortune comes from danger. Allow me. It was a man with a scar on his face. No one knew what he had gone through, but his face was full of scars. It was painful to look at. His gaze fell on Blue Sea and Simo. But the two of you, in the current situation, if you want to sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor, you'll have to raise the stakes. Blue Sea replied, "Speak." Blood Pillar 20 smiled. The scars on his face wriggled, making him look even more fierce. Simple. If I kill Qin Yu, the third spot on the Heaven's Choice altar will be mine. The faces of the other contenders for the throne changed slightly, and their eyes were filled with anger. Impossible. Let's see who gets the spot. I don't agree. Blood Pillar 20 sneered. You have an opinion? All right, I won't make a move. Who among you is willing to fight? Step forward now. Kill Qin Yu, and the spot will be yours. I'll be the first to agree. You too, I think you'll agree as well, right? Lan Hai nodded. Sure. He swept his eyes over everyone. Whoever kills Qin Yu, I and Shimo guarantee that the third spot will go to that person. Shimo was expressionless, but his silence made his attitude clear. Everyone hesitated. Everyone wanted a slot, but the black mist before them was truly the gates of hell. It was easy to barge in, but it was hard to tell whether they would survive or not. Seeing everyone hesitate, Blood Pillar 20 laughed out loud. His eyes were filled with mockery and mockery. Do you think a cowardly person is worthy of a Heaven's Chosen spot? He took a step forward, and his figure was like a rainbow as he brazenly tore through the black mist and charged into it. In the next moment, a violent roar came from within. The Heaven's Chosen platform was even trembling slightly. Large swathes of black fog were torn apart. Countless cracks opened and closed. Amidst the distortion and blur, one could vaguely see the figure of nearly 20 blood pillars. He recklessly laughed. A powerful strength surged around him, causing everyone's complexions to change. Even Lan Hai and Shimo's eyes widened. This person had been hiding his strength, or perhaps he had used some sort of trump card that allowed him to erupt with strength. Strictly speaking, this level of strength had already surpassed the Demon Commander level and had nearly touched upon the road of a nameless true monarch. Qin Yu, today, I will kill you. His wild laughter came to an abrupt end. The crazed impact of his strength instantly vanished from sight. The violently tumbling black fog that constantly twisted and shattered suddenly fell silent, like a great beast that had gone berserk had calmed down and become docile. This change was far too sudden. There wasn't even the slightest prelude. The result was that Blood Pillar 20 was the same as Blood Pillar 11. Like this, he vanished into the black fog without a single sound. It ended again. Looking at this scene, a cold chill drilled out from the depths of everyone's hearts, spreading up their spines and into their limbs, making them feel as if they had fallen into an icy lake. Alarm and fear uncontrollably surged out from the depths of their hearts, completely submerging their minds. When Blood Pillar 11 disappeared, no one felt anything. But they were well aware of the strength of Blood Pillar 20. Such a strong person had vanished without a trace in the blink of an eye. Without a single sound coming from him, the terror that this represented had risen by several times. Lan Hai's eyes darkened. He turned to look at the 7-kill clan elder. This old fellow was expressionless and motionless, like a statue. He cursed inwardly. He cursed in his heart. They were truly useless. To think that such a large group of people would be frightened by a single Yinwuya. Otherwise, why would it be so troublesome to kill Qin Yu? Now, the situation was far from good. He looked up at the rapidly condensing vortex in the skies. There wasn't much time left for them. Taking a deep breath, Lan Hai said in a low voice. Everyone, if you and I want to kill Qin Yu and return without accomplishing anything, have you thought about the result? Shiamo glanced at him and said, if Qin Yu doesn't die today, then once he returns from the ancestral land, that will be the time when all of us perish in body and soul. The air fell deathly silent. Pairs of eyes widened, unconcealable fear in them. This was a very simple matter. There was no need to think too much about it. Just a simple reminder was enough to understand. If Qin Yu didn't die, then they would all die. Lan Hai's voice became increasingly gloomy. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean we will die. For instance, if our family background is formidable enough that even the Nightmare King needs to fear them, then we might be able to continue living. For instance, me and Shiamo. The two of us represent the Ancient King and the new faction. If we pay a certain price, we might be able to survive. But what about you? His complexion turned icy cold. So if you don't want to die, then go all out. Qin Yu's strength absolutely cannot reach the level where he instantly killed the first two. For him to be able to do this, he must have borrowed some sort of trump card that the old king's bloodline prepared for him. Shiamo lightly said, you and I do not lack things like trump cards. We should all know that these things cannot be effective for a long time. For instance, if the first person instantly disappears, then the second person will have a chance to erupt with their aura. The power of Qin Yu's trump card is fading, but you don't necessarily need to attack one at a time. Join forces to kill him. Our previous agreement is still valid. We will protect your family's interests and influence, and the third spot will be up to you to decide. The two of them echoed each other, their cooperation perfect. The complexions of the remaining 5 contenders for the throne changed again and again. Although they didn't want to admit it, this was the situation. Lan Hai and Shiamo might live, but they would definitely die. If they didn't want to die, then they could only go all out. At the edge of the Heaven's Choice platform, the demon guards paled, their eyes filled with shock and anger. But since they had already made their choice, there was no point in regretting it. They stared at Yin Wuya, trying to find some useful information from his face. Humph, what are you looking at me for? If you want to kill Qin Yu, just these people are far from enough. Yin Wuya coldly sneered, a smug look on his face. He swept his eyes over the crowd. The throne of the new king is ours. The 7 Kill Clan elders suddenly said, Yin Wuya, there is something wrong with your current performance. Yin Wuya coldly sneered. He glanced at him, but didn't say anything. The contempt in his eyes deepened, as if he didn't want to talk to him. But this time, the 7 Kill Clan elder wasn't angry. Instead, he revealed a mysterious smile. Everyone, with Yin Wuya's temperament, what do you think he will do at this time? According to my understanding, if the old king's bloodline really had complete confidence in Qin Yu, then Yin Wuya would definitely deliberately put on an expressionless face, as if he had just been discovered by us. This would lure the other contenders for the throne to continue attacking and capture all of our juniors in one fell swoop. Just as his voice fell, everyone's eyes brightened. If one had to ask who understood a person the most, then their opponent would definitely be an outstanding individual. In these past years, the 7 Kill Clan elder had suffered losses at Yin Wuya's hands, both in the open and in the shadows. Just now, he had been pushed up against a wall in front of everyone, losing all face. So, it wasn't too much to say that there was a deep hatred between the two sides. The words of the 7 Kill Clan elder were certainly worth considering. In addition to Yin Wuya's sinister and treacherous performance, everyone was immediately enlightened. This must be it, this must be it. Qin Yu had a hidden card. He definitely had a hidden card. But this hidden card definitely had some sort of strict restrictions. For instance, the duration, the usage limit, or the weakening of strength. The channel was currently forming, and there was no precise limit to how fast it would be. No one knew when it would be finished, so they couldn't wait. If Qin Yu went in, then everything would be meaningless. Everyone would be killed one by one, and no one would be able to escape. They could only wait for him to return from the ancestral land and pick them up one by one. If they couldn't wait, then they could only gamble. They could gamble that Qin Yu's hidden card had a usage limit. What Xiamo said just now was correct. The second boy that went in had even released a great deal of his strength before he died. This was the evidence. Attack together. Kill Qin Yu. I don't believe that he can resist if all of you join forces. The demon guards roared out loud. Today, they had climbed onto the Heaven's Choice platform as guards and also as representatives of the will of their families. At a critical moment, they can make a choice. For instance, right now, if the contenders for the throne could seize it, then they would have the qualifications to enter the ancestral land. This also meant that they had the qualifications to inherit the throne. Their status was different from now. The demon guards didn't dare to casually give orders, but in this situation, there was nothing to worry about. If Qin Yu didn't die, no one would have a chance. The 5 contenders for the throne all had bitter expressions. If they had a choice, none of them would be willing to rush into the black fog and risk their lives. But now, it was clear that they had no choice. Then they could only risk their lives. It's not me. It's not me. The one who will die is definitely not me. Pa pa pa. All bad luck has left, and all good luck has arrived. I can definitely live. I can definitely live. These are the most intense emotions in the depths of their hearts. That's right. In the eyes of the 5 contenders for the throne, all they had to do now was rely on luck. They also believed in the judgment of the 7-kill clan elder. Qin Yu had a hidden card, but it definitely wasn't so strong that he could kill all of them. Otherwise, Qin Yu would still be hiding in the black fog. He could just kill them all and be done with it. Since he couldn't kill everyone with a hidden card, then whether or not he lived or died would depend on luck. As for whether or not Qin Yu would use a hidden card and rely on his own strength to kill them. Haha, that was impossible. Not even the slightest possibility. Everyone here was at the Demon Commander realm. Unless they stepped onto the nameless true monarch path and possessed strength comparable to a true monarch, it was impossible to accomplish this. This was a paradox. If Qin Yu had strength comparable to a true monarch, would he need to go through so much trouble? That's right, it was such a simple reasoning. So, the most important thing right now was to pray for good luck. Lon Hamo expressionlessly said, "Everyone, let's not waste any more time." In the next moment, he received 5 fierce glares, some obvious and some hidden. "You bastard, you aren't the one risking your life. So stop making sarcastic remarks." But just like what Yin Weia realized before, when it was time to go all out, there was no way to hide. "You 4, let's attack together." No matter how strong Qin Yu's hidden card is, he absolutely cannot deal with us all at once. Kill him, and everything will return to normal. Attack. Kill. The 5 competitors for the throne already knew that entering the Heaven's Choice platform would be filled with dangers, but they never imagined it would be so tragic that they would all need to risk their lives. With a roar, tyrannical fluctuations of strength erupted. 5 figures rushed into the black fog from different directions. It wasn't that no one thought of playing some tricks, such as entering the black fog a step too late. But the key point was that they weren't the only people on the Heaven's Choice platform. The demon guards at the edge of the platform had seen everything. There was no way they could take advantage of the chaos. If they dared to stay outside, they would be the first ones to be killed. Rumble, rumble. The black fog instantly fell into a frenzy. Without hesitation, the 5 competitors erupted with their greatest strength. In the next moment, it was like a giant bubble that completely shattered and dissipated. Qin Yu sighed inwardly. Indeed, a plan was always just a plan. No matter how much he didn't want to expose himself, there was nothing he could do now. He looked up, revealing a pair of eyes. They were pitch black like an eternal night, as if they could swallow all. Abyssal gaze. The 7-kill clan elder screamed. Because his emotions were wildly fluctuating, his voice became sharp and grating to the ears. His eyes widened as he stubbornly stared at Qin Yu. His pupils shrank in disbelief. At this moment, everyone on the Heaven's Choice platform finally knew what his trump card was. Yin Wuya's mood was like he had sat on a roller coaster. After reaching the peak, it plummeted 1,000 miles. Although this description wasn't too appropriate, it could barely be considered appropriate. He muttered, "That girl Yunlan, she even hid it from me." Outside the Heaven's Choice platform, two figures stood high in the air. The ancient king patriarch took a deep breath. The old king's bloodline, what wonderful methods! The awakened royal bloodline and the royal bloodline that obtained the prestige of the king boundary were on completely different levels. Even he never imagined that you could display the abyssal gaze. He wasn't a true king, but he already possessed a portion of a true king's prestige ahead of time. Indeed, variables were variables. They couldn't be estimated with common sense. The old king patriarch coughed several times. His old and withered face flushed red. Likewise, I'm also curious. Why did you choose Blue Sea? If he hadn't interfered, it would have been impossible for Yunlan to completely conceal the matter regarding Qinyu. Even with Yun Wuya's status, he was kept in the dark. Humph! The ancient king patriarch humphed. He didn't say anything else. He looked up into the distance. It looks like some people can't hold back any longer. The old king patriarch lightly said, "The succession of kings is a matter of my clan. Some people have stretched their hands too far." No one spoke again. Two old demons that had lived for countless years suddenly had a sharp light flash in their eyes. The ancestral land was the ancestral land of the nightmare race, the foundation of their clan. But at the same time, it was a shadow that covered the entire clan. Even they had chased after it for countless years and still hadn't been able to unravel the secrets of the ancestral land. Since some people wanted to show off their existence, there was no harm in giving them a chance. Perhaps they would be able to obtain some harvests. Bang! A terrifying aura instantly arrived. Boundless demonic strength roared and tumbled about. At this time, the entire abyss violently shook. A true king had arrived. Chapter 1142. Qinyu controlled the abyssal gaze and possessed a portion of the king's strength. Although it was unknown how he managed to do this, he had undoubtedly become an existence that stood above all other competitors for the throne. At this time, even if the black and white-haired man and the 7 Kill Clan elder didn't hesitate to risk killing Yun Wuya, they still wouldn't be able to stop Qinyu from entering the ancestral land. No one dared to underestimate the power of the abyssal gaze. The channel was rapidly forming and could open at any moment. For today's situation, the hidden existences had spent a great deal of time and effort to arrive at this step. How could he be willing to let everything go to waste and all his efforts go to waste? Even if doing this would trigger a series of consequences, they couldn't care about this right now. The time was fleeting. When it was time to act, there couldn't be any hesitation. Bang! Outside the Heaven Choice platform, the twisted space violently shook. Tiny cracks began to appear. Then, all of these cracks rapidly fused together, gradually forming the phantom of a door. In the next moment, a hand stretched out from this door phantom. The shaking of the twisted space suddenly increased by several times. Creak! Ear-piercing sound spread out, like countless knives stabbing into one's mind. The door phantom slowly opened. A tall figure stepped out. His blue and gold robes were covered with complex demonic runes that fluttered in the wind. A formidable strength lingered around him, isolating him from the cracks in space. The pupils of the ancient king and old king patriarchs shrank. They simultaneously said, "Netherworld royal bloodline." The tall figure had a calm expression. Netherworld profound strategy greets the ancient king and old king patriarchs. His expression was calm and unruffled. This was because he was strong enough to begin with. Like the ancient king and old king patriarchs, he had also stepped onto the path of a nameless true king. Of course, the most important reason was that he had a formidable background, so he didn't fear the nightmare race. That was the Netherworld royal bloodline that the two old demons had called out in unison. When the abyss was first formed, countless powerful life forms were born. In that ancient era, the Netherworld royal bloodline had already risen. In the endless years that followed, the Netherworld royal bloodline was one of the top influences in the abyss. It ruled over countless layers of the abyss and could decide the life or death of trillions of lives with a single thought. For some unknown reason, after a certain point in time, the Netherworld royal bloodline vanished and rarely appeared in front of others. Even the whereabouts of the Netherworld royal bloodline became a mystery. However, no one dared to doubt the power of the Nether royal bloodline. King Schwanza, today is the day of the birth of our new king. Why have you come? The Guwang clan leader asked. The Nether profound strategy's expression was calm. I both know it in our hearts. Why waste your breath? King Gu sneered. King Schwanza is too confident. Do you really think you can do whatever you want in the Nightmare Clan? Act recklessly? The corner of the Nether profound strategy's lips curled into a mocking smile. Why are you two putting on a show? Don't you want to know what secrets are hidden in the Nightmare Ancestor Land? The old patriarch coughed, and his face became even redder. His eyes shone brightly as he stared at the Netherworld profound strategy. Mysterious Strategy King seems to know a lot about my clan's secrets. I'm very curious. How did you find the way? Another voice rang out. Today, I invited King Schwanza here. I'm sure the two of you have already guessed it. So why are you feigning ignorance? Space twisted slightly, and a woman in a red dress walked out. Yes, it was a woman. She was tall and not beautiful, but she had a special charm. Her age couldn't be seen from her appearance, but her eyes were filled with the vicissitudes of time. The Nightmare Clan had three major forces: the Ancient King, the Old King, and the New Faction. The woman in a red dress was the leader of the New Faction. Her name was Hong Chong. Hong Chong. The Guwang clan leader's eyes were sharp. Do you know that it is an unforgivable crime to conspire with an outsider? It is an unpardonable crime to violate the ancestral land. Hong Chang's eyes were cold. Ancient King Guwang clan leader, you are so arrogant. If you want to punish me, then make your move. Previously, it was said that the women of the Nightmare Clan couldn't obtain the recognition of the ancestral land and become the Nightmare King. In other words, Hong Chong had no chance to become the king. But even so, she still became the leader of the New Faction. What she relied on was her absolute strength. There were four nameless true kings here, and abyssal profound strategy was unfathomable. It was hard to judge before they made their moves. But among the three nameless true kings of the Nightmare Clan, Hong Chong was the strongest. At least, that was what it seemed like on the surface. The old king Guwang clan leader said, Hong Chong, no matter how strong you are still a member of the Nightmare Clan. You should respect the ancestral land. Respect? Hong Chong gave him a look and suddenly laughed loudly. Even though she was a woman, she was extremely bold and unrestrained right now. However, if one carefully felt her laughter, they would be able to sense helplessness, mockery, as well as a hint of anger. Perhaps you should say that it is fear. The old king Guwang clan leader furrowed his eyebrows. Why remain silent? What you experienced in the past was a top secret of the clan, but it couldn't be hidden from our eyes and ears. Hong Chong continued to say, Old Wood, do you really not hate us? After all, the reason you have fallen to this state and suffered for countless years is all because we worship the ancestral land. The ancient king Guwang clan leader shouted, Hong Chong, be careful with your words. Hong Chong flicked her sleeves, and wild, demonic energy erupted. It was hard to imagine that her exquisite and alluring body hid a terrifying strength that could compare to a giant beast. Bang! With a loud explosion, the ancient king Guwang clan leader was sent flying away. His face was filled with anger, but he didn't counterattack. Crazy. This crazy woman. She dared to attack here. Wasn't she afraid? Hong Chong laughed. Chi Hung, you must be cursing me for being a crazy woman for attacking here, right? You are afraid that you will end up like Oldwood. No. If your luck is bad, you will end up in an even more miserable state. After all, if Oldwood wasn't lucky and ruthless, he would have been sucked dry and turned into a piece of wood. How could he have lived until today? She suddenly turned around and looked at the heaven-chosen stage within the distorted space. Ancestral land. What a good ancestral land. My Nightmare Clan has been passed down to this day, and the throne has never been severed. Our strength grows day by day, and we are known as one of the 10 great royal bloodlines of the Abyss. But is this really what you and I want to see? The Netherworld Profound Strategy lightly said, "There isn't much time left." As he spoke, he looked up at the rapidly condensing vortex in the sky. It would soon completely form. He couldn't be sure of the secret of the nightmare ancestral land. But if it was as he expected, then the future of the Netherworld royal bloodline would be here. Everything in the world had a reason. If there weren't enough benefits, who would be willing to take the risk? Hong Chang took a deep breath and said, "Go in. I can help you stall at least one person." As she spoke to hear, her lips curled up. Or perhaps, I don't even need to do anything, because what you are about to do is what they are hoping for. The Netherworld Profound Strategy's mouth twitched. He helplessly looked at Hong Chang. Although he knew that what this woman said was likely the truth, even though he knew that there was a high chance that he would be used as a tool by someone, he still had to take the initiative to help. This really didn't feel good. Turning around, King Profound Strategy took a step forward. A terrifying power erupted around him and collided with the distorted space. He wanted to forcefully open a path through the distorted space and descend onto the heaven-chosen stage. Being able to enter the nightmare ancestral land was, of course, the best choice. But the possibility was too low, and it was hard to guarantee that there wouldn't be any accidents. Then, sending the chosen person in and using him as a medium to obtain what he wanted was the best choice. The new faction, Shimo, was King Profound Strategy's choice. Rumble, rumble. Terrifying vibrations, self-distortion. From within the distorted space, the sound of a true king forcefully descending caused an unimaginable commotion. The entire heaven-chosen stage was violently shaking at this moment. The demon guards standing at the edge all revealed looks of shock and anger. When they looked at the black and white-haired man, they all had cold and unkind expressions. Among them was even the 7-kill tribe elder. Although they were high-level figures within the nightmare race, they didn't have the qualifications to know the true secrets of their race. For example, the mysteries of the ancestral land and all sorts of strange things. Even its existence was an unknown hidden danger to the entire nightmare race. Thus, in the eyes of the demon guards like the 7-kill tribe elder, the ancestral land was the nightmare ancestral land, the foundation of their entire race. But now, the new faction was actually cooperating with a true king from the outside world to break into the heaven-chosen stage. Although they couldn't hear what was being said outside, it wasn't difficult for them to judge from their actions. The black and white-haired man lightly said, "A true king is about to descend. All of you had best calm down. Otherwise, if you are casually killed, your deaths will be in vain." As he spoke, he glanced at Yinwuya. "Put away your little thoughts, and don't try to incite them to attack me. Otherwise, I guarantee that the first one to die will be you." Bang! Terrifying fluctuations of strength erupted from within his body. It made everyone feel as if a mountain had descended, pressing down on their chests. Even breathing became incomparably difficult. Yin Wuya bore the brunt of this. His complexion paled, and his pupils shrank. He came to a despairing conclusion. This black and white-haired man, this bastard, he had actually been hiding his strength all this time. Although there were flaws in his nameless True King road, the flaws weren't as large as what he had revealed before. What was truly lacking was only an extremely small portion. In other words, the black and white-haired man's true strength was only slightly lower than a true king's. Yin Wuya clenched his teeth and roared, "Black and white-haired man, just what is your new faction trying to do? Do not forget that the heaven-chosen stage is a part of the ancestral land, and the ancestral land is the foundation of my nightmare race." The black and white-haired man fell silent for a moment. He said, "I know some things that you do not know, but I cannot say more." His aura retracted a little. "But remember, everything that the new faction has done has not betrayed our race." Bang! Above his head, the twisted space shattered. Netherworld Profound Strategy stepped out and truly descended onto the heaven-chosen stage. Beneath his calm expression, his body was tense. He could erupt with his greatest strength at any moment. After all, this was the heaven-chosen stage, and the nightmare ancestral land possessed a mystical strength that the entire netherworld royal bloodline yearned for. Luckily, nothing unexpected occurred. The nightmare ancestral land seemed to tacitly approve of his existence. Netherworld profound strategy let out a light breath. His eyes swept over Chinyu. If it weren't for this junior, he wouldn't have appeared today. Although he hoped that the Netherworld royal bloodline would be able to obtain something vital from the nightmare ancestral land. But when the one carrying out this task was himself, unease, hesitation, and even fear were unavoidable. Now, there was no meaning in saying all of this. Since he had arrived on the heaven-chosen stage, he had already prepared himself to bear all consequences. But this didn't mean that Netherworld profound strategy would let go of the person who had caused all of this, Chinyu. His eyebrows furrowed together. Netherworld profound strategy turned his head and looked at the edge of the heaven-chosen stage. His icy cold eyes flashed. The black and white-haired man looked at Yin Wuya, who was gradually straightening his back and releasing a powerful aura. After a moment of silence, a trace of admiration appeared in his eyes. He was only a fine line away from the true king realm. It was because of this that he could clearly feel just how strong King Xuanzi was. This was a difference in the natural order of life, a difference that represented absolute strength. Facing King Xuanzi, Yin Wuya actually dared to erupt with his aura and express his hostility without hesitation. Disregarding whether or not he was stupid, just this courage surpassed countless people. Chapter 1143. Interesting. Netherworld Strategy's lips curled up. Little fellow, you haven't even stepped onto the road of a true king, and yet you dare to provoke me? Aren't you afraid of death? Yin Wuya's complexion paled. With every word he spoke, his complexion grew paler. Kacha! Kacha! Within his body, his bones constantly cracked. It was like a towering mountain above him that wanted to crush him to pieces. This was the strength of a true abyssal king. To obtain the recognition of the abyss, in a way, they were a part of the abyss. With just a thought, he could control the vast energy to silently destroy everything. Of course I am afraid of death, but in my nightmare ancestral land, even if you were a true king, you are not allowed to offend me. Yin Wuya spoke unhurriedly, enunciating each word clearly. The eyes on his pale face were incomparably bright at this moment, flashing with a stubborn light. You want to help him stall for time? Netherworld Strategy shook his head. It's useless. I won't give you any chance. After a brief pause, he lifted a hand and pressed forward. You are very brave. Because of this, I won't kill you. Be quiet. Bang! Space violently shook. Yin Wuya froze where he was. Blue veins popped out from his neck, and strength wildly surged within him. But he was unable to shake the suppressive strength outside. This was the terror of a true king. And at this time, Netherworld Strategy turned around and looked at Chinyu once more. Whether it was because of his anger towards him or because he wanted to ensure that Shimo obtained the throne, he had to erase him. One of the reasons he didn't kill Yin Wuya was because he admired his courage. Another reason was that he didn't want to deepen his enmity with the previous king's bloodline. But this didn't mean that Netherworld Strategy didn't dare to kill him. On the contrary, if necessary, he would kill everyone on the Heaven's Choice stage today. His pitch-black eyes were like ink, pure without any impurities. As he met King Xuanzi's gaze, his heart wildly raced. Fear surged out like a tide, wildly attacking Chinyu's will. His complexion became even paler than Yin Wuya's, without the slightest trace of blood. But deep in his eyes, he maintained a calm composure as he looked at the true abyssal king. The reason Chinyu was able to accomplish this wasn't because he was brave or because he believed he had the qualifications to contend with a true abyssal king. The true reason was that Chinyu was certain that whether it was Qi Zhen who was slumbering in his shadow or Marquis 15 June who was hiding, neither of them would stare blankly on as he was killed by King Xuanzi. Otherwise, all of their arrangements would have been meaningless, taking 10,000 steps back. Even if they didn't do anything, there was still the little blue lamp. Only with confidence could one resist fear. It was as simple as that. Monarch Xuanji secretly frowned. Just how sharp was his perception? Qin Yu's fear and composure were all exposed in front of him. What did this junior have to rely on? He was actually able to maintain his composure in the face of a true king. Although it was a publicly acknowledged fact that everyone below a true king was an ant, it did not mean that a true king could do as he pleased. With some scruples, King Xuanji's eyes became incomparably deep. His formidable divine sense rose to the highest level as he stubbornly locked onto Qin Yu. The more powerful one was, the more one understood the world, and the more respect one would have for this world. In a situation where one had a choice, it was never a mistake to be cautious. Then, Monarch Xuanji's complexion changed. He really did feel some unusual aura coming from Qin Yu's body. No, it wasn't just 1, 2, 3. There were even more. Monarch Xuanji's eyes became dignified. This was because although he could sense these auras, he couldn't clearly capture them. Obscure, ethereal, formidable. That's right, formidable. The two auras that were hidden the deepest even made him feel an incomparably intense threat. If it weren't for Monarch Xuanji personally sensing these auras, he wouldn't have believed that a mere demon commander level junior was actually hiding so many astonishing secrets. His eyes flashed. Monarch Xuanji's gaze fell on Blue Sea. He suddenly had a new idea. You kill him, and I will spare your life. Blue Sea stiffened, and his complexion paled. He never thought that the situation would suddenly shift to him. Kill Qin Yu. He certainly wanted to kill him. In fact, it could even be said that he wanted Qin Yu dead more than anyone else present. But the crux of the matter was that Qin Yu had grasped the materialization of the abyss. It wouldn't be easy to kill him, but that was his hidden card. He could only use it after entering the ancestral land, and that would be his final chance. Taking a deep breath, Blue Sea clenched his fists beneath his sleeves. Gotcha! There was a shattering sound. In the next moment, the distorted space outside the Heaven's Choice stage violently shook, and a terrifying oppressive aura was released from within. Outside the Heaven's Choice stage, the ancient King Patriarch, Old King Patriarch, and new faction leader Hong Chang's complexions changed. They fiercely looked up and stubbornly stared at the void in front of them. From the black crack, a terrifying claw stretched out. It grabbed the edge of the crack and ruthlessly tore it open. Then, a great dragon head drilled out. Abyssal demon dragon. The three people roared. Roar! The massive dragon body forcefully squeezed out of the space crack. Without hesitation, it smashed into the distorted space outside the Heaven's Choice stage. The abyssal demon dragon didn't release any strength. Just by relying on its powerful body, it was able to resist the crushing and tearing force of the distorted space. I've been invited by the contract to descend. I must fulfill the contract. The abyssal demon dragon let out a deep roar. Its giant eyes locked onto the ancient King Patriarch, Old King Patriarch, and new faction leader Hong Chang. It revealed a cold and threatening expression. You had best remain silent. If you dare to stop me, don't blame me for being merciless. The cold voice echoed through the skies. The ancient King Patriarch, Old King Patriarch, and Hong Chang all had ugly expressions, but they still stood where they were. Not to mention that the Demon Dragon tribe was a terrifying faction that stood at the peak of the abyss and was even stronger than the Nightmare tribe. Just the strength of this abyssal demon dragon wasn't something they could match. If they stopped him, it was hard to predict what the result would be. Moreover, the resistance in their hearts wasn't too strong. The inheritance of the throne was already chaotic. So what if there was another abyssal demon dragon? At most, it would cause the situation to spiral out of control. Perhaps this would be more advantageous to them. They could see how the ancestral land would react and force out its secrets. Bang! The distorted space was torn apart. The abyssal demon dragon charged into the Heaven's Choice stage. Its massive body recklessly released an aura that made one's heart race. A pair of giant dragon eyes locked onto King Schwanza. It slowly said, "King Schwanza, we meet again." King Schwanza furrowed his eyebrows for a moment before composing himself. Elder Subtle Law, the demon dragon tribe, is so powerful, so why interfere in today's matters? The abyssal demon dragon lightly said, "The Netherworld King bloodline is interested in the secrets of the nightmare ancestral land, and so is my demon dragon tribe." King Schwanza's eyebrows furrowed even tighter. "Elder Subtle Law, can you take a step back? My Netherworld race will surely pay a sufficient price. I have already arrived. This is my attitude. What need is there for King Schwanza to say?" Demonic energy flashed, and the terrifying abyssal demon dragon vanished from sight. Elder Subtle Law landed on the Heaven's Choice stage. Lucy bowed. "Greetings, Elder." He had crushed the contract and summoned the abyssal demon dragon. There was no way to hide this, nor did he think about hiding it. If he succeeded today, he would become the new Nightmare King. No matter what he did, everything would vanish in a thin air, and no one would dare to pursue it. If he failed, then perhaps death would be his best ending. Since that was the case, there was no need for him to have any scruples. Elder Subtle Law lightly said, "I have arrived today to ensure that you can smoothly enter the nightmare ancestral land, but I hope you won't forget our agreement." Lucy was incomparably respectful. "Elder, don't worry. Lucy wouldn't dare to forget." "Humph." King Schwanza coldly snorted, a dark expression on his face. But he had already fought with Elder Subtle Law before. Both sides were equal in strength, and Elder Subtle Law couldn't do anything to him. Lucy entering the nightmare ancestral land had already become a reality. He turned to look at Shiamo. This ordinary nightmare demon dragon tribe member had a calm expression. "King Schwanza, don't worry. The throne will be mine." From a nobody, he had walked step by step to where he was today. He had even obtained the approval of the Netherworld King bloodline before he could enter the Heaven's Choice stage. Shiamo, who liked to remain silent, couldn't be as ordinary as he seemed on the surface. Lucy had a final gambit, but so did he. The throne was right in front of him. Who could survive until the end would be able to leap up and become the peak existence in the abyss. At that time, whether it was the Netherworld King bloodline or the abyssal demon dragon, they wouldn't have the qualifications to continue manipulating them. But all of this was built on the premise that you had to be killed. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the chance to enter the nightmare ancestral land. Shiamo bowed. "King Schwanza, please kill Chinyu. We don't have much time left." The vortex above their heads had almost completely formed. One could faintly make out a passage within it. That was the great path to enter the nightmare ancestral land. King Schwanza was expressionless. He glanced at Elder Subtle Law and said, "There are many cryptic auras hidden within this junior's body. If you and I join forces to kill him, we will be absolutely safe." It was absolutely impossible for him to do it himself. But since the old demon dragon was also interfering, he had to share a portion of the risk. If two abyssal king-level existences were to attack together, even if Chinyu had some great secret, it would be hard for him to escape death. Elder Subtle Law remained silent. As he looked at Chinyu, a complex light flashed in his eyes. He never imagined that he would meet Chinyu here today. Kill him. The contract was still in this boy's hands. Before it was completed, he couldn't do anything. Cough, cough, taking a step back. Even if he paid some price to kill Chinyu, Elder Subtle Law would have to think twice before doing so. After all, this boy Chinyu was someone that Miss Liao Shi had specifically asked him to look after. As for Liao Shi, although she had already disappeared, if he really killed Chinyu, Elder Subtle Law didn't believe that he would be able to come out unscathed. Feeling the complex emotions in the old dragon's eyes, Chinyu stepped forward and cupped his hands together. "Elder Subtle Law, we meet again." Before Liao Shi left, she asked me to send her regards. Elder Subtle Law's lips twitched. Even if he didn't need to use his dragon scales to think, he could tell that this boy's greeting was just something he made up. But was that important? Liao Shi's existence was like a mountain. Unless he truly didn't care about the consequences, he couldn't be ignored. Qin Yu, for the sake of Miss Liao Shi's face, I won't kill you, but now withdraw. Qin Yu looked up and looked straight into Elder Subtlelaw's eyes. Becoming the new king of Nightmare Ancestral Land was the mission that Liao Shi gave me. If Elder wants me to withdraw, I'm afraid she won't be happy. Elder Subtlelaw frowned. His eyes shrouded Qin Yu, trying to discern the truth of his words. Liao Shi's mission? What did she want to do? Could the secret of the Nightmare Ancestral Land have also aroused her attention? That's right. Although Elder Subtlelaw instinctively doubted Qin Yu's words, the truth was that he already believed most of them. If it weren't for Liao Shi's arrangements, how could Qin Yu have the qualifications to enter the Heaven's Choice platform and compete for the position of Nightmare Ancestral Land's new king? If this was really Liao Shi's plan, then it would be troublesome. The consequences of ruining this plan would likely be far worse than killing Qin Yu. King Schwanz's eyes were cloudy and uncertain. He looked at the silent Elder Subtlelaw. He didn't know who Liao Shi was, but it was clear that this old dragon feared her incomparably. Perhaps one of the powerful and threatening auras he sensed from Qin Yu's body had come from her. This was troublesome. He took a deep breath and said in a low voice, Elder Subtlelaw, this junior is the only one who has obtained the approval of the Nightmare Ancestral Land. If he doesn't cooperate, then our plans will fail. No one here was an idiot. Without batting an eyelid, King Schwanz changed the key. He no longer wanted to kill Qin Yu and instead wanted him to cooperate. Subtlelaw understood King Schwanz's meaning. His eyes flashed, and he said, Qin Yu, if you want to enter the Ancestral Land, then I can agree. But the person we choose must also enter with you. This was likely his bottom line. Qin Yu nodded without hesitation. Okay. Blue Sea and Mo both looked at Qin Yu, a deep dread in their eyes. But they didn't say anything because this matter had already surpassed the limits of what they could participate in. The reason Qin Yu was able to bargain and even force Elder Subtlelaw and King Schwanza to back down was because he had used the skin of a tiger to frighten them. Liao Shi's background was indeed extraordinary, and after today's events, he clearly owed her another favor. After entering the Ancestral Land, kill Qin Yu at all costs. King Schwanz's voice sounded out in Shimo's ears. He calmly nodded and glanced at Blue Sea not too far away. The two people's eyes met and then separated. But in this brief moment of contact, they had reached an agreement. Qin Yu must die. Otherwise, even if the two of them smoothly entered the Ancestral Land, with the intensity of his bloodline, the throne was already in the bag. Qin Yu had a calm expression. He didn't pay attention to Blue Sea and Mo, but it wasn't hard to guess what they were thinking. What they were thinking was correct, but the result likely wouldn't be as they wished. Chapter 1144. Two True Kings. The channel will soon open. Qin Yu must take the initiative to shatter the mark of the Ancestral Land that he has obtained. 7 kills, Patriarch loudly reminded. Qin Yu glanced at him. He lifted a hand and tapped between his eyebrows. With a light popping sound, the flashing marks shattered and dissipated. Hum! Hum! The entire Heaven selection stage began to violently shake. The surrounding distorted space began to fluctuate. In the next moment, including Qin Yu, all 8 candidates revealed looks of surprise. To crush the blood pillars above all of their opponents and obtain the approval of the Ancestral Land alone. This was the first time something like this had happened within the Nightmare race. Therefore, when the selection began again, everyone discovered a fact that made their hearts beat faster. All of them had actually been recognized. To be more precise, the Ancestral Land had released the restrictions and allowed them all to enter. Whoosh! With the sound of breaking air, a candidate soared into the skies. Demonic energy burned around his body as he rushed towards the vortex above his head. Blue Sea's complexion changed. Elder, stop him. AOFA flicked his sleeves. Space twisted and wrapped around the candidate that soared into the skies. Scarlet flowers of blood bloomed. I've already said that only Blue Sea Shimo, and Qin you may enter. If anyone dares to act rashly, this will be their fate." The entire arena fell deathly silent. The joy in the eyes of the other candidates froze. Their flushed faces slowly turned pale. That's right, even if they obtained the approval of the ancestral land because of the new selection, so what? With Elder AOFA and the profound tactics king here, they simply had no chance of entering the channel. If they tried to force their way in, that would only lead to death. At this time, the vortex above the heaven selection stage had completely condensed. The slightly blurry channel instantly became clear. The heaven selection stage shook once more, erupting with a repulsive strength. It tumbled about like an endless wave. Bang, bang, bang. The suppressed Yunwia, 7 kills patriarch, and the other demon guards were the first to be sent flying away from the heaven selection stage. The profound tactics king coldly coughed. "Why haven't you left yet? Do you want to wait for death here?" The remaining candidates trembled. Unwillingness flashed in their eyes. They looked up at the channel that had appeared. It was right in front of their eyes and within reach. In just a few more breaths, they would be sent into it, but the difference of a few breaths was a heavenly chasm that they would regret for the rest of their lives. Clenching their teeth, several people turned and left, taking the initiative to fly off the heaven selection stage. In the blink of an eye, only Lan Hai, Shimo, and Qin Yu remained. The Xiansu king raised his head and silently looked at the passage that appeared in the vortex. His eyes were filled with uncertainty. Beside him, AOFA also had a hesitant look on his face. The two of them stayed and did not retreat. They were like two boulders sitting in the middle of torrent. Loud rumbling sounds kept coming from their bodies. If it were anyone else, even a Devil Commander level powerhouse, they would be crushed to pieces in an instant if they approached the two true monarchs. Even the Demon Dragon race and the Netherworld royal bloodline weren't completely sure what was hidden inside the Nightmare ancestral land. If the two of them could enter, that would be the best choice. That was especially the case now, when he saw the vortex condensing and the passageway fully emerging, and that thought became even more intense and impossible to suppress. But soon, the Xuanzi King and Elder AOFA's expressions changed slightly, and they both took a step back. Their figures flickered, and they appeared outside the heaven selection stage. At this time, the two true monarchs' pupils were still fiercely shrinking. Just now, they had clearly felt a terrifying aura. This aura made them feel as if they were directly facing the abyss. And the only thing that could give them this sort of pressure was the unsurpassed will of the abyss. Rumble, rumble. With a loud explosion, the heaven selection stage rapidly rose into the air. Then, as if it were being held up by an invisible hand, it howled into the vortex. Then, the entire vortex began to spin. The heaven selection stage began to shrink until it was nothing more than a black that completely vanished. The vortex gradually stopped spinning. The passage that appeared within it had already vanished. When it appeared once more, it meant that the struggle for the ancestral land had come to an end, and a new Nightmare King had been born. The Xiansu King took a deep breath and suppressed the surging emotions in his heart. He was almost certain that his race's guess was correct. As long as he could smoothly obtain what was within the Nightmare ancestral land, the hidden Netherworld royal bloodline would be able to rule the abyss once more. Shimo was the choice of the royal bloodline, so he would definitely succeed. As his emotions surged, the Xiansu King lost control of his strength. Immediately, a purgatory projection appeared around him. Within this purgatory projection, there were countless demons of all sizes. They were trapped within, howling in agony as the purgatory burned them. If Qin Yu were here, he might have discovered that one of the demons in the purgatory looked very familiar. The Xiansu King took a deep breath and withdrew his strength. The purgatory projection vanished. He glanced at Elder AOFA and discovered that this old dragon had a deep frown on his face, as if he was deep in thought. Although he had absolute confidence in the royal bloodline's choice of Shimo, the Demon Dragon clan's strength was in no way inferior to the royal bloodlines. The Demon Dragon clan had chosen Lan Hai because he had the qualifications to be valued. This old dragon, AOFA, actually didn't have much confidence. Was it because of Qin Yu? Or was it because of that woman behind him called Master Liao? The Xian Su King hesitated for a moment. He said, "Elder AOFA, are you willing to trade information?" AOFA glanced at him. Regarding Master Liao, there is no need for the Xian Su King to speak. He closed his eyes, no longer speaking. The Xian Su King furrowed his eyebrows, a dignified look in his eyes. With this old dragon's strength and status, he didn't even dare to speak. Master Liao. This woman's background was likely even greater than he imagined. Shiamo had already made his move. If that junior Lan Hai wasn't an idiot, he would definitely choose to join forces with him. If the two of them erupted together, unless a true king made a move, who could resist them? Qin Yu would definitely die. He had to die. In fact, the Xian Su King's guess was correct. A great battle had already erupted. The only difference was that Qin Yu was the one who took the initiative to attack. This was because the moment he entered the ancestral land's passageway, the little blue lamp's thoughts had sounded out in Qin Yu's mind. Although he had already guessed that the little blue lamp had a plan, when Qin Yu learned of this, he was still shocked. Originally, Qin Yu was only a chess piece wrapped up in a torrent, a chess piece that had no choice but to move forward. But according to the little blue lamp's plan, he would leap out and leave the chess game, becoming the chess player that controlled the chess pieces. No, to be more precise, he was pulling everyone into his game of chess in order to achieve his ultimate goal. Although he was shocked, Qin Yu accepted the little blue lamp's plan without hesitation. It was certain to be risky. In such an astonishing chess game, the slightest mistake could lead to complete destruction. But with the little blue lamp's cautiousness, without enough benefits, it would never make such a wild and radical plan. Then, he might as well go all out. His Titan true form arrived. In the blink of an eye, Qin Yu transformed into a 10,000-foot tall giant. He lifted his hand and punched out. At the same time, his eyes turned pitch black. The abyssal gaze activated. But now, no one would know that the pitch black in Qin Yu's eyes was only a thick curtain and barrier. It covered up the great sun that rose from the depths of Qin Yu's eyes, hiding it in the darkness so that no one could sense its aura. The abyssal gaze was a terrifying supernatural ability that the Nightmare King could use after obtaining the approval of the abyss. In other words, it was a continuation of the will of the abyss to use the strength of the will of the abyss to conceal itself from the abyss. Perfect. Blue Sea froze. His heart wildly shrank. Fear surged through him like a mighty tide, crazily crashing into his mind. Abyssal Titan, he actually had the Abyssal Titan bloodline. How was this possible? Although there were powerful bloodlines that fused together in the abyss, what could be displayed was only the strongest bloodline. The rest were all in a dormant state. Before this, Qin Yu had clearly displayed the fully awakened Nightmare King bloodline. But now, he had directly transformed into an Abyssal Titan. This was simply unbelievable. But now wasn't the time to be shocked or in disbelief. Blue Sea roared out loud, and golden scales appeared on his body. That was right, this was pure gold. It flashed with a brilliant golden light, pure and noble. A powerful aura erupted from him. Bang! As the golden scales appeared, Blue Sea's aura was like an awakened volcano, crazily rising at a terrifying speed. You want to kill me? Impossible. With a roar, Blue Sea punched out a fist. The 10,000-foot tall Abyssal Titan collided with Blue Sea's fist. A terrifying shockwave of strength swept out in all directions. Space violently twisted. Countless pitch-black cracks appeared. The earth disintegrated, crazily spreading out like a spider web. At this time, Blue Sea screamed out loud. Ew. Before he could finish speaking, he was like a puncture balloon. His aura rapidly collapsed and dissipated. In the next moment, Blue Sea was sent flying backwards. A wild strength broke into his body, wildly wreaking havoc and destroying everything. In an instant, The light in his eyes completely dimmed. Then his entire body was torn apart into countless pieces. Large chunks of flesh and blood rained down. But soon after, a strange scene appeared. After Blue Sea was killed, his shattered flesh and blood began to rapidly reform in midair. In a breath of time, the shattered flesh and blood reformed into a complete Blue Sea. His dim eyes suddenly erupted with brilliance. In the next moment, he stomped his feet and rapidly drew backwards. Besides his pale complexion and weak aura, everything that happened just now seemed like an illusion. But at this time, in the City Lord mansion of End Peak City, in a heavily guarded chamber, the air was filled with the thick smell of blood. Blue Sea, who had been ordered to stay here and cultivate, suddenly exploded without warning, turning into countless chunks of flesh and bones on the ground. Even when he died, he didn't know what had happened. It was naturally impossible for this to be an illusion. The reason Blue Sea was able to revive was because he had already prepared an escape route for himself to come back from the dead. A younger brother who shared the same mother and bloodline was obviously the best medium for this. GMO, there's another formidable strength hidden within Qin Yu's body. If you and I don't join forces, only death awaits us. With a mournful roar, golden scales appeared on the surface of Blue Sea's body once more. Then he turned and fled. That's right. A second ago, Blue Sea had been screaming and shouting to join forces with GMO to resist Qin Yu, but now he was fleeing with all his strength. He was an idiot. He never thought that after separating, there was a high chance he would be killed off one by one. This was because Blue Sea was well aware that even if he joined forces with GMO, they still weren't Qin Yu's match. The strength hidden within Qin Yu's body was terrifying to an unimaginable degree. Just by touching it, he was instantly suppressed. It was as easy as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. There was no room for resistance at all. His consciousness was annihilated, and his body collapsed along with it. Last time, he had been able to revive. But if he died again, he would truly die. Bang! White flames ignited around Shimo's body. Within these flames, his entire body rapidly turned transparent. Like a shadow, it merged with the world and disappeared in the blink of an eye. He hadn't fought with Qin Yu, but it wasn't difficult for him to feel Blue Sea's fear and despair. Joining forces to kill Qin Yu was indeed the best choice. But since that wasn't possible, he could only flee for his life. If he left here, he might have a chance to obtain the approval of the ancestral land and become a nightmare king. At that time, so what if Qin Yu was strong? Even if a true king attacked, he would still die. The 10,000-foot-high Abyss Titan roared, "You cannot escape." He lifted a hand and grasped forwards. Space violently shook, and the transparent figure of GMO was forced to appear. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes widened, revealing endless fear. He finally understood what Blue Sea felt. That strength, it was unimaginably strong. At the same time, the rapidly fleeing Blue Sea roared out loud. He crazily punched out at the void in front of him. There was a heaven-shaking explosion, as if he had struck an invisible mountain. Space shook, tumbling and spreading out, but he couldn't break through the seal in front of him. Break! Break! Break for me! The Abyss Titan's eyes were ice cold. Without hesitation, he punched out a fist. Like a hurricane, everything in front of him was torn to pieces. This included not only the sky and earth, but also the transparent GMO and the crazily roaring Blue Sea. Perhaps both of them were the most outstanding bloodline descendants of a nightmare race. They had also obtained the approval of the Netherworld royal bloodline and the Demon Dragon clan. Their strength and luck were both at the peak, and they had the potential to leap up and become nightmare kings, stepping onto the peak of the abyss. Perhaps they both had their most powerful cards in their hands. In a struggle for the throne, they could play a role in turning the situation around. But unfortunately, they encountered Qin Yu, or to be more precise, Qin Yu's great son hidden beneath the solidified abyss. Everything became meaningless. Because from the moment that great sun rose beneath the black curtain in Qin Yu's eyes, they had become chess pieces destined to be destroyed. Chapter 1145. Perhaps no one would have thought that the struggle for the Nightmare King position had already ended. Blue Sea and Shima had died. If Qin Yu wanted to, he would become the only candidate in the ancestral land. Inheriting the throne would be a smooth process. But what a pity, whether or not the Little Blue Lamb's plan existed, it was impossible for Qin Yu to accept the so-called Nightmare King position. He took a deep breath. In his true form, the abyssal titan emitted a loud, rumbling sound, like the roar of thunder. Qin Yu looked around. This was an independent space that was almost the same as the outside world. It wasn't too large, and he could clearly see the gray borders. But it was impossible for it to be ordinary. For instance, when he killed Blue Sea and Shima just now, all the traces of destruction had disappeared, and it had been restored to its original appearance. It really was exactly the same as before. It was like there was a powerful restraining strength in this space that kept everything in its original state, not allowing any changes or changes. There were no accidents. The abyssal titan that Qin Yu had incarnated had a flash of joy in its eyes. Using the power of the abyss gaze to conceal the great sun's aura was the key to the entire plan. If he failed, there would be no possibility of continuing. Now, it seemed that the result wasn't bad. Then let's continue. The abyssal titan looked up at the center of the ancestral land. He could faintly see an incomparably massive group of palaces there. The old turtle was there. Rumble, rumble, the abyssal titan stepped forward. The earth shook as he tore through the air, advancing at astonishing speed. Soon, the group of palaces appeared in front of him. How to describe its scale? With Qin Yu's current state, the size of this group of palaces was just right. It was like an ordinary human standing outside an ordinary palace. There were people outside the palace. To be more precise, there were 2 golden armored guards. As Qin Yu stopped, they opened their eyes. Golden light surged within them, shining with endless majesty. It made one instinctively feel awe. How dare you? Who dares to trespass into the residence of a saint? Amidst the explosive roar, the wind and clouds surged in the sky above. Endless lightning exploded at the same time. Raging lightning swept out. It was brilliant, like the might of the heavens and earth. But this scene only lasted for a short period of time. The thunder in the skies rapidly dissipated, and everything returned to tranquility. The 2 golden-armored guards bowed, as if they were listening to orders. After several breaths of time, their golden eyes fell onto Qin Yu. The sage invites you in. You may enter. The abyssal titan frowned slightly, and then it calmed down. It didn't hesitate in the slightest to step into it. Countless paintings were engraved on the walls of the incomparably magnificent palace. There were paintings of chaos before the abyss was formed, of all kinds of terrifying creatures wreaking havoc when the abyss was formed, and there were also paintings of terrifying pillars of lightning destroying everything. On one of the scrolls, Qin Yu saw a black divine mountain. The surface of this mountain was covered with countless demonic runes. At the peak of the mountain, there was a mysterious existence sitting upright. Below him were countless abyssal creatures that prostrated themselves on the ground in worship. Among them, Qin Yu saw an abyssal demon dragon, an abyssal titan, and all sorts of other powerful creatures that had long since gone extinct. His footsteps paused for a moment. His eyes focused on the peak of the mountain, on that mysterious existence. Space twisted around it, making it impossible to see it clearly. But when his eyes fell on it, he faintly felt as if he were being watched, as if that mysterious existence was observing him. His heart chilled. A chill rose from the depths of his heart, extending upwards, making him feel as if he had fallen into an icy lake. A long time ago, when I first appeared in the world, the spirits of the abyssal were summoned and came to worship me. They were bestowed titles by my will. A calm voice suddenly echoed out in the hall. Then, in front of Qin Yu, space and time seemed to stretch without end. It made one feel as if they had fallen into the abyss, the weightlessness striking at their minds. Luckily, this feeling only lasted for a moment. Then, Chinyu discovered that he had appeared in a painting from a long time ago. In front of him was a black divine mountain that broke through the ground and soared into the heavens. Countless demonic runes covered its surface, and light surged endlessly, releasing in endless majesty. Beneath the divine mountain were countless abyssal creatures. There were 100,000-foot-high abyssal demon dragons, abyssal titans that supported the heavens, demon birds that blotted out the skies with their wings. Although they were of different races, they had one thing in common, and that was that they were all incomparably powerful. Chinyu stiffened. As he felt the aura of these abyssal creatures, fear rose in his heart, and his mind nearly collapsed. Even so, all of his attention was instinctively drawn to the mysterious existence at the summit, even though there were no fluctuations of aura around him. It was like wherever he arrived, no matter when or where he was, it would automatically become the center of the world. At this time, the mysterious existence at the summit suddenly looked up at Chinyu. He frowned and then waved his hand. A formidable repulsive strength instantly erupted, pushing Chinyu out from this sealed space-time. Dang, dang, dang. The abyssal titan was forced backwards. His eyes widened, and he gasped for breath, sweat dripping down his forehead. What you saw just now was a moment that I inadvertently recorded. A voice sounded out in the hall once more. Then, the light in front of him gradually brightened, and Chinyu saw who was speaking. With just a single glance, Chinyu could determine that what he saw now was the mysterious existence at the summit of the mountain in front of him in the painting. As for appearance or anything else, Chinyu didn't pay attention to it, because that was meaningless. He was him. He was not him. He was omnipresent. He was omnipresent. There was nothing he wasn't. Old turtle. This was the existence that Shi Zhan spoke of, the existence that had been hidden in the nightmare ancestral land for countless years. He was the abyss, or to be more precise, he was a part of the abyss. You already know my identity, so why haven't you given up on those illusory thoughts? The old turtle slowly said, his tone calm and without the least bit of emotion. But amidst this calmness, there was an indisputable and valiant will that naturally flowed out. Chinyu's eyes revealed a hint of struggle. He lowered his head, his body shivering. The old turtle frowned, his voice becoming increasingly indifferent. You still think you can get lucky? To stand in front of me is to be enemies with the abyss. And now that you are in the abyss, the only result is destruction. He lifted a hand and spread out his 5 fingers. At this time, each finger was shining. The halo of light wasn't dazzling, but rather gentle. Now, follow my will and become the new Nightmare King. This is your only chance to wash away your sins. I will let bygones be bygones and give you the chance to start anew. Come, accept my grace. You will become the true king of the abyss and obtain the approval of my will, eternal life. The abyssal titan's body shivered even more violently. A low and deep voice came out from his mouth. Eternal life, just like those chess pieces of yours that are constantly awakening in the cycle of samsara. Even if I wanted to die, I wouldn't be able to do so. Ha ha, I really don't want such an eternal life. He looked up, revealing pitch-black eyes. This darkness was pure to the extreme, able to cover up all. Thus, the great sun in his eyes erupted with a blinding light. But it didn't spread out at all, instead being hidden in the darkness. The old turtle furrowed his eyebrows even tighter, and a trace of restlessness appeared in his eyes. Although he didn't want to admit it, Chinyu gave him an intense feeling of threat, as if there was a blade on his back. Just what was it? It was similar to the aura of the abyss, but it wasn't a strength that originated from the abyss. Have you considered the consequences of refusing me? The old turtle's deep and low voice sounded out in Chinyu's ears, filled with an oppressive aura. Chinyu relaxed a little. He knew that the little blue lamp's plan had succeeded once more. This was because the attitude of the old turtle was the second key turning point in the entire plan. Of course, even if he made a mistake and the old turtle suddenly launched an attack, the little blue lamp had already prepared additional plans to deal with him. But this would disrupt everything that followed and make it nearly impossible to achieve the final goal of the entire plan. Old Turtle, it had to be said that there were only wrong names, but there were no wrong nicknames. This was an ancient existence that possessed an aura that was nearly identical to the will of the abyss. It was filled with a cautious nature. Of course, it had been mentioned countless times before that there was nothing wrong with being cautious no matter the time. But once one crossed a certain boundary, this involved the fact that everything in the world was a single entity with two sides. One had to deal with it dialectically. In short, the old turtle's cautiousness allowed Chinyu to continue following the optimal plan. He sneered, "Rather than becoming a puppet and being controlled from now on, I might as well die in battle." He paused for a moment. "Moreover, I wasn't the only one who wanted to go all out today. Otherwise, how did you think I would have smoothly entered the ancestral land?" The old turtle's tone was faint. "You also said that they were all controlled by me. Even if they developed thoughts of rebellion, they wouldn't be able to stir up any waves." After a brief pause, he leaned forward. "If you don't believe me, then you can try. I am willing to give you a chance to regret your decision. After you see their fates, you will naturally be willing to accept the grace I give you." The Abyss Titan nodded. "Good." He lifted a leg and stomped down. The shadow beneath him wildly shook. "Chinyu, what are you doing?" Qizhun roared out in alarm and anger. This was completely different from their plan. Shua, he appeared in midair. As his eyes fell on the old turtle, he froze and began to shiver uncontrollably. It shouldn't be like this. Damn it, just what was Chinyu trying to do? Moreover, he was actually hiding the Abyss Titan bloodline. Just what the hell was this? While he was filled with shock and anger, Qizhun suddenly thought of a possibility. Could it be that this brat had reached an agreement with the old tortoise? Or could it be that he was originally a chess piece set up by the old tortoise to lure them to attack and kill the threat? If this was true, then everything they had done was a joke. But that wasn't right. Chinyu was clearly different from them. If this really was the old turtle's plan, then it was impossible for there to be no trace of it. Just what was going on? Thoughts flew through Qizhun's mind, tangling together. The more he thought about it, the more confused he became. But no matter what the truth was, there was no doubt about one thing. Chinyu had torn up their previous agreement, and things had spiraled out of control. The old turtle narrowed his eyes. He never expected that Chinyu would have such a reaction. Like this, Chinyu had actually tossed out Qizhun. Was there a trap here? Or was it that he didn't know what Qizhun's true nature was? To threaten him, it simply didn't exist. Don't worry, you aren't the only one who wants to attack. The Abyss Titan suddenly punched out his fist. Space collapsed inwards. The old turtle's pupil shrank. At this time, he could feel an extremely threatening aura coming from Chinyu's body. Moreover, with just a single punch, Chinyu had broken through the ancestral land that he had spent countless years to strengthen. In the next moment, a roaring figure appeared from the shattered space. This person seemed to know what was about to happen. He crazily struggled to escape, but in the end he failed. Dong! With a loud bang, Marquis 15 fell to the ground, smashing open a deep pit in the hall. He stood at the bottom of the pit, his complexion pale. As his eyes swept over the old turtle, they became even uglier. Without giving him a chance to be angered, the Abyss Titan roared out, "I can give you a chance to temporarily escape the old turtle's control. Whether or not you can grasp it will depend on yourselves." He knelt on the ground, raised his fist, and smashed it down. Kacha! Kacha! Countless cracks appeared and quickly extended outwards. They were densely intertwined like a giant spider web. In just a few breaths' time, the cracks had covered the entire palace. Everything within sight was covered in cracks. The old turtle stuffily coughed, anger and shock in his eyes. At the same time, his fear of Chinyu rose to the highest point. Chinyu could actually injure him. Now is the time. The two of you can attack. Of course, you can also choose to attack me, if you think that the existence you call Old Tortoise will forgive you in the end. The Abyss Titan retreated. Marquis 15 clenched his teeth. He glared at Qin Yu with hatred in his eyes and rushed out without hesitation. He was well aware of his status. If he broke into the ancestral land, there was a chance that Qi Zhen could survive. But there was no way he could survive. Of course, the most important thing was that the feeling Qin Yu gave him right now was far too terrifying. The Abyss Titan was fine. No matter how strong Qin Yu was, he wasn't his match. But the crux of the matter was that with a single punch, Qin Yu had shattered the entire palace and removed the old turtle suppression. This was simply inconceivable. Qi Zhen laughed out loud. His eyes became bright as he stared at the old turtle. He said in a dreamy tone, "You can't imagine how long I've been waiting for this day. I didn't expect that it would actually come true. Although you are me and I am you, I still want to say that your face is far too ugly. I have long wanted to ruthlessly punch it." Bang! His feet fell, and he shot into the skies, his speed even faster than Marquis 15. As for the result, it would be best if he could kill the old turtle, but the chances of this happening were far, far too low. But even if he couldn't kill him, being killed by him would also be the best. After all, Qi Zhen had wanted to die for a long time. It would be best if I killed you, but it wouldn't be bad if you killed me. With this mentality, he didn't feel any pressure at all in this battle. This was Qi Zhen's truest state of mind. Bang! Wild fluctuations of strength erupted in the cracked hall. Qin Yu had already retreated. The two golden-armored guards glared at him. "Insolence! You dare to disrespect a saint!" But while they shouted, they didn't have any intention of attacking Qin Yu. Qin Yu glanced at them. He only glanced at them for a moment before continuing to retreat. A trace of regret flashed in his eyes. The little blue lamp was indeed terrifyingly strong, but it wasn't strong enough to directly destroy the old turtle. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. Looking at it now, the entire hall had been smashed apart. There were countless cracks all over, and it looked extremely miserable. But the truth was that as long as the hall didn't collapse, there wouldn't be any damage to its foundation. As long as the little blue lamp strength was used up, these seemingly miserable cracks would be restored to their original state. Then, the suppression of the old turtle that had been temporarily shielded would reform once more. At that time, Qi Zhen would be the first to die. Marquis 15 might be able to last a little longer, but the result wouldn't change. So, while it was possible to use the two of them to delay for time, it was impossible for them to directly kill the old turtle. In the end, he still had to rely on himself. Qin Yu, who had transformed into an abyssal titan, took a deep breath. Loud rumbling sounds filled the air. "Let's begin," he muttered to himself and sat down cross-legged. In the next moment, darkness filled his eyes. Like a black flood, it submerged Qin Yu's figure before completely disappearing from sight. In the cracked hall, the battle had entered a frenzied state from the very start. Qi Zhen wanted to kill people, and he didn't fear death. Marquis 15 didn't want to die, but he was well aware that only by killing the old turtle would he have a slim chance of survival. Thus, these two fellows that had been forced by Qin Yu to the point of risking their lives against the old turtle were truly going all out. A spear appeared in Marquis 15's hands. As the spear point swayed, it shined with light like a black dragon and released a terrifying aura. Not too far away, Qi Zhen also had a pitch-black saber in his hands. It seemed as if it had absorbed a great deal of ink. These two divine weapons each possessed a part of the Abyss attribute and could cause damage to the old turtle. Otherwise, even if he stood still and allowed the two of them to crazily attack him, they still wouldn't be able to cause any damage to the old turtle. But being able to cause damage and having already caused damage were two completely different concepts. At the very least, Qi Zhen and Marquis 15's attacks were incomparably violent and tyrannical, but they still weren't able to cause any substantial damage to the old turtle. As time slowly passed, Qi Zhen and Marquis 15's eyes revealed a trace of anxiety and helplessness. Wanting to kill the old turtle wasn't easy at all. Once he broke through Qin Yu's suppression, neither of them would be able to escape. Qi Zhen was fine. If he could die here and completely dissipate, He would no longer have to suffer the pain of samsara. But Marquis 15 didn't want to die. Qin Yu, no matter what you want to do, you had best hurry up. We won't be able to last much longer. No one was a fool. The reason Qin Yu pulled the two of them into the ancestral land wasn't because he wanted to watch them die in front of his eyes. Thinking like this wasn't wrong, but there were always accidents. For instance, Qin Yu really was waiting for them to die. The deaths of Qi Zhen and Marquis 15 would be the turning point for the next step. Chapter 1146. The old turtle was naturally cautious. Well, to put it more bluntly, he was afraid of death. This wasn't a flaw at all. After all life forms in the world, as long as they had their own independent consciousness, they would instinctively feel awe and fear towards death. But in fact, there were different levels of fear. If one had to give the old turtle a label, then it would be that he feared death at the peak. As long as he could live, he was willing to do anything. For instance, sealing himself in this small world called the nightmare ancestral land. The endless years had washed over him, producing loneliness and loneliness. The constant accumulation of loneliness was enough to collapse a person's mind. But the old turtle was an exception. Not only did he not show any signs of his mind collapsing, but he instead feared death even more. This was why he divided into several shadows to control the nightmare tribe, constantly providing him with the source strength he needed to continue living. The reason he said so much was to make one point clear, just how much the old turtle feared death. In order to continue living, he was willing to do anything. And this point was also an incomparably important point in the little blue lamp's plan. Of course, this was all for later and could be set aside for the time being. In the cracked hall, the old turtle withstood the crazy attacks of Qi Zhen and Marquis 1000 June. Although he was as steady as a mountain, he was still worried in his heart. Qin Yu's appearance was indeed a variable that surpassed his control. After sensing his existence, the old turtle was instantly vigilant. So, after the Heaven's Choice altar descended, he added fuel to the fire and made Qin Yu the target of everyone, trying to kill him with a borrowed knife. Unfortunately, those bastards from the Nightmare tribe were far too useless. The arrival of King Xuanzi and Elder Mysterious Spell caused the old turtle to see hope once more. Thus, he acquiesced in their arrival. Otherwise, the Heaven's Choice altar was a part of the ancestral land and also the strongest defensive system of his turtle shell. How could he tolerate true kings breaking in? But the result was like this. Qin Yu was alive and well. He entered the ancestral land, and then a series of changes occurred. The old turtle began to regret not destroying Qin Yu as soon as he entered the ancestral land. Now, he felt as if he had fallen into Qin Yu's rhythm. A foreboding feeling lingered in his mind. No, he had to make a change. He couldn't allow himself to be schemed against by Qin Yu. These two little things in front of him had to be killed immediately. After all, Marquis Qianjun carried out the will of the abyss, so it was only right to destroy him. But Qi Zhen, his shadow, actually wanted to kill him instead. It was simply unforgivable. Didn't you want to die? Fine, I'll fulfill your wish today. Outside the majestic palace, in the endless darkness, the abyssal titan opened its eyes. Hidden in the depths of its inky black eyes was a great sun that shone brilliantly. Through the little blue lamp, Qin Yu could clearly feel the change in the old turtle's aura. He was going to deal a heavy blow. Even though Qi Zhen and Marquis Qianjun were very powerful, facing the enraged old turtle, the only outcome was death. Like Blue Sea and Xiamo, they were also part of the plan. They were fated to be sacrificed. Only they were slightly stronger. It was Marquis Qianjuan's voice, filled with fear and despair. But he was powerless to change his fate. "Save me, please save me," he crazily roared, his face full of pleading. But he didn't obtain the slightest response. Many years ago, a shadow of the will of the abyss developed a thought that it shouldn't have. It didn't want to follow the decision of its main body and dissipate itself. Thus, the powerful nightmare race was born in the abyss. They were born with incomparably powerful supernatural abilities that restrained the various races of the abyss. These supernatural abilities were passed down to this day. As the shadow of the abyss lived longer and longer, it became more and more afraid of death, so it was willing to endure loneliness and solitude. It did everything it could to continue living, and this was something that the will of the abyss would never allow. Thus, Marquis Qianjun appeared to find a chance to destroy the shadow. The shadow was very careful. Marquis Qianjun couldn't find a chance, and he wasn't willing to take risks. Thus, the stalemate continued until today. Then, Qinyu appeared. Marquis Qianjun cooperated with Qi Zhen and was finally forcefully pulled into the ancestral land. In his despair, Marquis Qianjun tried to seek help from the will of the abyss. In truth, he didn't understand that he was only a shadow. The will of the abyss didn't allow it to continue existing, but it also wouldn't pay too much attention to it. As for him, he was nothing more than a casual chess piece. In the endless abyss, he was nothing more than a drop of water in an endless ocean. To summon the will of the abyss and rescue him from this hopeless situation, the chances of this happening were basically negligible. Bang! After a loud explosion, Marquis Qianjuan's aura rapidly vanished from sight. Qi Zhen was deathly pale, but he revealed an excited expression. He loudly roared, "Come, hurry up and attack. I have been waiting for this day for countless years." A complex look appeared in the old turtle's eyes. Perhaps he was thinking, I was such a shadow that feared death, and yet the little shadow I split off would have such a personality. It's simply inconceivable. But no matter how complex his emotions were, the old turtle didn't hesitate at all. He lifted his hand and slapped out. Pa! The crisp sound was like the final syllable of a bubble that had been inflated up high. Qi Zhen was like this bubble. His entire body shattered into countless pieces, and he rapidly vanished from sight. In the darkness, the great sun hidden deep within his eyes suddenly shook. The abyssal titan roared out loud and grasped forwards. Bang! Bang! Countless wisps of aura howled through the cracks in the hall. The reason he destroyed the hall was to break the suppression of the old turtle so that Qi Zhen and Marquis Qianjun could fight and give Qinyu time to prepare. But more importantly, the current scene had caused the old turtle to be unable to completely seal them in. After the two people died, their auras began to disperse. The old turtle was the shadow of the abyss, and Qi Zhen was the shadow of the old turtle. Although their relationship was complicated, there was one thing that was clear. Qi Zhen's aura came from the same source as the abyss. It was because of this that he was able to do all sorts of inconceivable things in the outside world. As for Marquis Qianjun, he was a chess piece of the abyss. Although this chess piece wasn't very successful, and it was likely that he had already been forgotten, the essence of his identity wouldn't change. As a chess piece of the abyss, he certainly had the aura of the abyss. There wasn't much of the aura of the abyss on their bodies, and a portion of it had been intercepted by the old turtle. But if they were gathered together, they could just barely be used. And this was the turning point that Qinyu had been waiting for. He wanted to use the aura of the abyss to forcefully break open the thick shell of the old turtle and pull in two powerful helpers to complete the climax of his plan. Without a doubt, Elder Arcane Mind, who had delivered himself to his doorstep, was one of the helpers. As for the other, if King Xuanzi knew that he would encounter today's events, he would likely regret his initial curiosity. This was because curiosity could sometimes kill a cat, but it could also kill an incomparably powerful true king. The vortex in the skies of the abyss still existed. Some time had already passed since the Heaven's Choice stage had entered. According to past records, the channel could open at any time, and the only person to walk out would be the new Nightmare King. Elder Arcane Mind and King Xuanzi stood on one side. The ancient King Patriarch, the old King Patriarch, and the new Hong Chong stood on the other side. Even further away were the black and white-haired man, Yun Wuya, the 7-kill Patriarch, and the other demon guards who had been expelled. At this time, All of their eyes were focused on the vortex, their expressions dignified. But this dignified look had different meanings. What Arcane Mind and King Schwanza were worried about was whether or not they could obtain the things within the Nightmare Ancestral Land. The Ancient King, the Old King, and the new faction all wanted to know whether or not they could obtain the secrets of the Ancestral Land this time. As for who the new Nightmare King was, that didn't seem important at all. As for the remaining people, perhaps the black and white-haired man knew some inside information. As for the others, what they cared about was who the new Nightmare King would be. There was a deathly silence in the air. All of a sudden, the vortex in the sky began to spin. From stillness to rotation, this change didn't pause at all. It was so sudden that everyone's eyes widened. Their breathing quickened. The vortex spun. Just who was it that had become the new Nightmare King? At this time, Elder Arcane Mind frowned. The Abyssal Demon Dragon race was known as the beloved children of the Abyss, and they had obtained a high degree of recognition from the will. Faintly, they had an extremely keen sense for threats. For example, as the vortex in the sky spun, he sensed a sudden threat coming at him. Beside him, King Schwanza's face also revealed a trace of surprise. He didn't feel it as clearly as Arcane Mind, but he also felt uneasy. Could it be that a new change had occurred in the Nightmare Ancestral Land? Without giving the two true kings any more time to think, the passage within the vortex appeared again, and the path to the Ancestral Land opened. Everyone's eyes subconsciously widened, but what happened next was beyond their imagination. The passageway opened, but no one walked out. Instead, an incomparably powerful pulling force suddenly erupted from within. The target of this pulling force was obvious: Arcane Mind and King Schwanza. The Ancient King clan leader, the Old King clan leader, and the new faction's Hong Chong. The three nameless true kings' expressions changed slightly, and they immediately retreated. Looking at the passage within the vortex, a thought involuntarily popped up in their minds. The one hidden in the Ancestral Land had finally begun to retaliate against the arrival of Arcane Mind and King Schwanza. And this was exactly what they had hoped for. Perhaps through what happened next, they could confirm the true secrets of the Ancestral Land. They wanted to know just what the Ancestral Land was. What was the relationship between the existence of the Nightmare Clan and the Ancestral Land? Bang, bang, Arcane Mind and King Schwanza's auras erupted at the same time. The two abyssal true kings furrowed their eyebrows, a dignified look in their eyes. The Nightmare Ancestral Land had attacked them. It was inevitable that they would be shocked and angry, but in the hearts of the two true kings, they didn't panic too much. The pulling force from the vortex was indeed tyrannical, but to a true king-level existence, it wasn't impossible to resist. With just this, they wanted to pull the two of them into the Ancestral Land. Humph humph, how laughable. Moreover, through this matter, it seemed that the true situation of the Nightmare Ancestral Land had been exposed. If it only possessed this degree of strength, then taking advantage of the situation to slaughter its way into the Ancestral Land wasn't a bad choice. The only thing they feared was that this was a deliberate bait. Elder Arcane Mind glanced at King Schwanza. His lips moved, and just as he was about to say something, his complexion changed. Jinyu, with a loud roar, terrifying fluctuations of demonic energy erupted from his body. In the billowing waves of black, demonic energy, Elder Arcane Mind revealed his true form as an abyssal demon dragon. He directly rushed into the passage in the vortex, and then, beneath the widened eyes of countless people, he forcefully squeezed his way in and vanished without a trace. Chapter 1147. King Schwanza's eyes widened as he thought. Since when did this old demon dragon become so radical? He actually broke in just like that. No, before he left, he shouted out the name Chinyu. Could it be that this matter was related to that junior? Elder Subtle was not willing, but for some reason, he had to enter the Ancestral Land. If that was the case, he He really hoped that this old demon dragon could be buried there. The abyssal demon dragon race was too horrifying. To be able to weaken their power was something that the Netherworld royal bloodline would be happy to see. However, what if this was just a deliberate ploy by that old demon dragon, Alpha? He must have discovered something and couldn't wait to break into the nightmare ancestral land. He was worried that it would cause a fight, so he deliberately played this trick to mess up King Schwanz's judgment. This was not impossible. King Schwanz's brows furrowed, and his eyes were uncertain. He had a feeling that he was in a dilemma after thinking for a long time. However, this dilemma did not last for long. With a boom sound, the purgatory projection suddenly appeared outside his body. Among them, a figure that was suffering from the purgatory flame suddenly widened his eyes, revealing a look of ecstasy. He raised his head and stared at King Schwanza. His emotions were running wild. "You dare to capture me? Don't you know that I have a backer? Now, I will let you know what the consequence of touching me is. So what if you're a true king? When my master makes a move, he'll beat you all to the ground. Now, tremble and despair. Your good days are over." At this moment, Shadowless Demon's face was full of tears. Unfortunately, as soon as the tears came out, they were burned by the purgatory flame. So, his emotions of joy could not be perfectly released. However, it did not matter whether he released his emotions or not. Shadowless Demon just wanted to see King Schwanza being beaten down by his master. While he was shocked and angry, King Schwanza also realized that the powerful force that suddenly descended on him was because of the existence of the purgatory. To be exact, it was a little thing that was suppressed by him in the purgatory. King Schwanza's first reaction was that he could not believe it. After all, the purgatory was the most powerful magical power of the Netherworld royal bloodline. Unexpectedly, because of a little thing that was suppressed, it became a medium to counteract him. If there really was such a huge flaw, the Netherworld royal bloodline would have been destroyed a long time ago. How could it be able to dominate a region until now? But no matter how much he couldn't believe it, it had already happened. The power that descended upon him was like a giant, invisible hand that wanted to pull him into the vortex. Humph! Schwanji Monarch snorted coldly and raised his finger. In his purgatory, everything could be controlled by a single thought. Since it was because of this little worm that he was being suppressed, he would naturally be able to escape once he killed this little worm. It was a good idea, but soon King Schwanji's face turned ashen and panic appeared in his eyes. The reason for that was because he discovered that even though his finger had already landed, purgatory was still extremely calm. There was not the slightest ripple. It was as though the connection between him and the purgatory had been severed by some powerful force. Of course, it wasn't appropriate to say that they were completely separated, because purgatory was still his purgatory, and the two of them were inseparable. But he had lost control of purgatory. Bang! Around his body, the violent power suddenly soared. King Schwanji groaned, and his body uncontrollably moved forward. Every step he took caused the space around him to shatter. Countless cracks spread out in all directions. "Break for me!" King Schwanji reared his head back and roared. The strength of a true king erupted without reservation. The already severely broken space was instantly shattered into powder, turning into endless darkness. But this wasn't able to resolve the danger he faced. The strength that firmly grabbed him was violently pulled once more. This time, it was even more terrifying than before. Even someone as formidable as King Schwanji had no way to contend with it. With a roar of anger, he flew into the air and fell into the vortex channel, vanishing from sight just like Elder Arcane Spell. The broken space was rapidly restored to its original state. Countless eyes widened, and the world was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Even the sound of breathing had vanished. What was going on? Who was dealing with Arcane Spell and King Schwanji? What sort of change had occurred within the ancestral land? Countless chaotic thoughts fiercely collided in everyone's minds. They were like a pot of rotten porridge, recklessly tumbling and bubbling. When Elder Arcane Spell handed over the summoning contract to Chinyu, he had thought that this would bring him great danger. But no matter what, he never imagined that today's situation would occur. With Elder Arcane Spell strength, even amongst the true kings of the Abyss, he was an extremely powerful existence. There weren't many factors that could threaten him, much less something that could threaten his life. But now, this sort of thing had happened. As soon as Elder Arcane Spell saw the old turtle, he stiffened. He didn't need any words to confirm his identity. The shadow of the abyss that had betrayed him. This was a warning that came from the fused abyssal source within his body. Even if it was only a shadow, when the true body was the endless abyss itself, it still possessed an inconceivably terrifying might. That bastard Chinyu, he had actually summoned him to the nightmare ancestral land. While he was furious, Arcane Spell also felt a bit of a headache. Because no matter how he looked at it, it felt as if he had delivered himself to Qin Yu's doorstep on his own initiative. After all, if it weren't for the fact that the two sides were too close, when the contract was activated and he felt a threatening aura, he might have paid a price and refused to descend. The only thing that comforted Elder Arcane Spell was that he wasn't the only one suffering from bad luck. Looking at King Xuanzi not too far away, whose face was as black as the bottom of a pot, Elder Arcane Spell suddenly felt that he wasn't wrong too much. After all, he was the one who had agreed to hand over the summoning contract to Qin Yu on his own initiative. Now, he was suffering the consequences of his own actions. But what about King Xuanzi? This fellow didn't have the slightest connection with Qin Yu. It was clear that he had been schemed against and forcefully pulled into this mess. He was truly worthy of being someone that even that woman Liao Shi had to take care of. He really couldn't be underestimated. The solemn, true Abyssal King had been schemed against just like that, and not even he had been able to feel anything strange about it. This method was truly terrifying. Or could it be said that the reason Qin Yu was able to scheme against King Xuanzi was because of Liao Shi's arrangements? Elder Arcane Spell. King Xuanzi, this junior knows that you must be enraged right now. You must hate me for dragging you into the nightmare ancestral land. But with danger comes opportunity. I believe that you too should have already determined the identity of this existence in front of you. The Abyssal Titan's voice became increasingly gloomy. Destroy him, and you will obtain a reward from the will of the Abyss. With this reward, you might be able to achieve your respective goals. For instance, Elder Arcane Spell might wish to take another step further and transform into the highest level Abyssal Demon Dragon. As for King Xuanzi, he might be able to use this merit to offset the crimes of the Netherworld royal bloodline and escape the shackles of imprisonment. Elder Arcane Spell and King Xuanzi shook. They stubbornly stared at Qin Yu, endless shock in their eyes. Everything he mentioned was top-secret information that no one knew about. But Qin Yu had casually mentioned it. How did he know? As the hearts of the two true monarchs shook, Qin Yu's lips curved up. He continued to say, or perhaps the will of the Abyss doesn't care about the existence of this shadow, and you too won't be able to obtain a reward, but this result will be even more tempting to you. After all, even if it is only a shadow, it still contains a faint strength of the will of the Abyss. If you swallow this strength, you can obtain even more. Elder Arcane Spell and King Xuanzi's breathing deepened. The possibility that Qin Yu spoke of wasn't impossible. If they could really obtain the strength of the will of the Abyss contained within the shadow of betrayal, just thinking about it caused their hearts to race. It wasn't that the two true monarchs weren't shrewd enough, but rather that this temptation was far too great. It was so great that it was even more tempting than the best possible situation they could imagine. But the premise of all of this was that they had to destroy the shadow of betrayal in front of them. The old turtle slowly spoke, his deep and low voice echoing in the air. Although the true monarchs of the Abyss are strong, I am the Abyss. Even if I only have a 10,000th of my main body strength, killing you isn't difficult at all. Now, I will give you my promise. If you kill Qin Yu, I can let you leave, and I will no longer pursue your crimes." The old turtle didn't deny his own nature. Qin Yu clearly knew his background. An arcane spell and King Xuanzi were both true monarchs that had obtained the recognition of the will of the abyss, so they were able to recognize him with a single glance. The abyssal titan laughed. "100th of your strength? You think too highly of yourself. If you really had such strength, you could kill a true monarch with a single thought. There would be no need to waste your breath." His eyes were sharp as he stared at the old turtle. "Moreover, you have forgotten the most important point. All true monarchs need to obtain the recognition of the will of the abyss in order to become a true monarch. In other words, even if Arcane Spell and King Xuanzi reach a compromise with you today and leave the ancestral land unscathed, once they are discovered by the will of the abyss, they will inevitably lose their boundary." The abyssal titan incarnation of Qin Yu's eyes became even darker. "Two true monarchs. There is no need to delay any longer. I will work together with you to destroy the shadow of betrayal. This is in line with our common interests." Elder Arcane's spell glanced at Qin Yu, his eyes indifferent without much fluctuation. "What bullshit common interests? You actually dared to scheme against me? If it weren't for the contract binding us, I would have swallowed you whole and let you experience what it meant to have sharp teeth that could cut through iron like mud. Even your bones would be chewed to pieces by me." But reason told him that what Qin Yu said wasn't wrong. Eliminating the shadow of betrayal was their best choice, of course. This was based on the premise that Qin Yu didn't play any tricks in the dark. He always felt that this boy's actions weren't as simple as they seemed. If he wasn't careful, he would fall into Qin Yu's trap. King Xuanzi coldly said, "That rat in my purgatory, was he a chess piece that you placed down a long time ago?" The abyssal titan lightly said, "This junior doesn't have the ability to foresee the future. This is only a coincidence. King Xuanzi, you just happen to be dragged into this." At this time, there was no need for Qin Yu to lie anymore. King Xuanzi's eyes darkened, and his complexion became increasingly ugly. Coincidence? It was actually a coincidence. He really wished he could raise his hand and slap himself in the face several times. He was simply not doing his job properly. What was he being so curious about? Because of a pill that could activate his bloodline, he had brought himself such a great deal of trouble. What cheap hand! What a sin! In the purgatory projection, Shadowless Demon's body trembled with excitement. He knelt on the ground and constantly cowed out. "Master, it really is my master." He saw everything that happened outside. He thought, so my master is so crazy that he even dared to scheme against a true Abyss King. And he even schemed against two of them. Although he had some guesses before, when he confirmed the scene in front of him, the psychological impact it formed still made his heart surge. Of course, more importantly, Shadowless Demon discovered that Qin Yu's strength wasn't limited to just this. What was even more shocking was that his master had driven the two true Abyss Kings with the ultimate goal of eliminating the shadow of betrayal. That was the shadow of the Abyss. All right, even if it was just a shadow, the power it had could casually crush him into pieces with a flick of a finger. His master's strength had completely surpassed the limits of his imagination. King Xuanzi's eyes flashed coldly. This damned little bug, does he really think that he, a dignified true Abyss King, can't do anything to him? Qin Yu, I can agree to your proposal, but the premise is that you must let me personally kill this lowly ant. After a slight pause, his tone became even colder, because the dignity of a true king cannot be challenged. Chapter 1148. The Abyssal Titan narrowed his eyes. If King Xuanzi insists, then this junior can agree. Before King Xuanzi could reveal a happy expression of revenge, his cold voice continued. But please consider this carefully. After killing Shadowless Demon, you will be my enemy. After the matter of the ancestral land comes to an end, this junior will naturally demand a price from you. Threatening him? The dignified Abyssal King, one of the rulers of the Netherworld royal bloodline, was actually being threatened in such a straightforward manner. Ridiculous. King Xuanzi almost laughed out of anger, but in the end, he forcefully suppressed his laughter because Qin Yu's eyes were very serious. And more importantly, he could feel a real threat from those serious eyes. It was as if a cold and sharp blade had touched his skin, but it did not seem to have touched him. Traces of coldness continuously invaded his mind. King Xuanzi couldn't help but consider this feeling. Was it worth paying such a price to kill Black Sky Demon? Qin Yu's strength might not be much, but the facts proved that he had the qualifications to scheme against a true king. He and the old dragon, mysterious dragon, were now trapped in the ancestral land. They hated him to the point of gnashing their teeth, but they could only endure it. This was an indisputable fact. If one lived long enough, they would experience enough things, and if they experienced enough things, they would develop thick skin. In a basic situation, the length of one's life was directly proportional to the thickness of one's skin. In other words, King Xuanzi's skin was very thick. A true king's dignity couldn't be offended, but it also depended on who it was. If Shadowless Demon was only Shadowless Demon, then killing him wouldn't be a problem at all. But with Qin Yu's help, things were different. This matter once again reminded them of a very important point. There was a great difference between having a backer and not having one. Cough, cough. Of course, King Xuanzi didn't expect that Qin Yu would threaten a true king for Shadowless Demon. Cough. I was just joking. Little friend Qin, there's no need to take it seriously. King Xuanzi calmly said, without the murderous intent from before. But since I'm already here, I ask little friend to help bring this person out of purgatory. This was the benefit of being thick-skinned. When he changed his expression, there was not even the slightest bit of awkwardness. It was smooth and natural. Qin Yu shook his head and said, for now, Shadowless Demon can only stay in purgatory. As for the specific reason, I cannot explain it. But King Xuanzi, please rest assured. As soon as I leave Nightmare Ancestral Land, I will take him away. His refusal was straightforward, and he didn't even give an explanation. Facing a dignified true king, such an attitude could be said to be extremely rude. King Xuanzi was thick-skinned, but it didn't mean that he was shameless. His mouth twitched, and his eyes became gloomy. But the more Qin Yu didn't give him face, the more he didn't dare to act rashly. To put it simply, it could be described as acting cheap. His eyes grew even gloomier, and he hesitated for a long time before he said in a low voice, all right, I hope little friend Qin can keep his word. Elder Arcane, Mage, suddenly spoke up. Don't waste your breath. Since you've made your decision, let's begin. He licked his lips, and his eyes brightened. Although he was indeed annoyed at being pulled into the Nightmare Ancestral Land, he wished he could tear Qin Yu to shreds. But now, as he faced the shadow of betrayal, he couldn't help but feel excitement rise in his heart. Even if it was only a shadow, what it represented was a part of the pure source of the abyss. If he could kill it and seize the source of the abyss, then if everything went smoothly, he could become the most powerful abyssal demon dragon. He might even have the qualifications to attack the legendary realm of the Dark Saint Dragon and truly become a part of the will of the abyss. The old turtle paled. He screamed out, "You are too insolent. Do you really think that my existence is something you can offend?" He lifted a hand. At this time, the entire Nightmare Ancestral Land darkened. Countless clouds howled out, weaving together to form a curtain that blocked out the skies. There was no eruption of thunder. Instead, there were only black clouds surging like billowing tides. Although they shook, there was no sound at all. But it was this sort of silence that actually released an even more terrifying pressure, as if everything within its range would be destroyed. This was a shadow that defied the will of the abyss, a shadow that struggled to survive in a sealed environment, a shadow that continued to divide itself and control the entire nightmare race, of course. One couldn't really regard it as an ordinary shadow. If there was a ranking of shadows that feared death, then the old turtle would definitely be at the peak. But if there was a ranking of shadows that had existed since ancient times, then he would also be an absolute leader. The complexions of the mysterious mind and King Xuanzi changed. At this time, they could feel an incomparably powerful pressure bearing down on them. Even their hearts began to slow down. The circulation of demonic energy was difficult and difficult. Their perception of the outside world became blurry. It was like they were tightly wrapped up in thick cirrus membranes. Layer upon layer, they found it hard to breathe. This was the might of the will of the abyss. Although it was far from 1% of the strength that the old turtle had mentioned, it was still able to create an extremely strong suppression on them. King Xuanzi roared out loud, "Little friend Qin, if you have no way to suppress the aura of the shadow of betrayal, then we will all die here." The mysterious mind was silent. Being suppressed by the shadow of betrayal was indeed dangerous, but he wouldn't fall into a state of complete collapse in a short period of time. But he also wanted to know what Qin Yu's trump card was, or to be more precise, did this junior have the qualifications to join forces with him? He and King Xuanzi were both genuine, true abyssal kings. This in itself was proof of their strength. As for Qin Yu, he lacked such proof. Or, to put it more bluntly, the mysterious mind and King Xuanzi would adjust their own attitudes based on Qin Yu's following performance, as well as how they thought about what would happen next. If Qin Yu really had the qualifications to fight alongside them, then the final benefits and harvests would naturally belong to him. Otherwise, to be arrogant to such a degree and yet not have the strength to protect himself, the only fate awaiting him was to die a horrible death. Deep within the abyssal titan's pitch-black eyes, a great sun released 1,000,000,000,000 rays of light. A deep and low voice came from his mouth, constantly rumbling in the air. "Of course, I will help the two true kings in order to achieve our mutual interest." He lifted a hand and slowly reached into the heavens. His 5 fingers spread open and he clenched them. In that instant, a heaven-shaking explosion erupted. A terrifying shockwave of strength spread out from the dark clouds that covered the skies. "Ah!" The old turtle roared in anger, his voice filled with unconcealable pain. He glared at Qin Yu, his eyes filled with hatred and hidden fear. "Who are you? Just who are you?" As a shadow of the abyss, he was certainly familiar with the strength of the abyss. But now that the shockwave erupted, what was suppressing and tearing him apart was a completely different strength. Boundless and brilliant, it exuded an endless majesty and power. It swept out like a raging flood, capable of tearing apart all that stood in its way. The complexions of the mysterious mind and King Xuanzi changed. Their pupils violently shrank, revealing endless dread. Qin Yu was actually able to release this sort of aura. This wasn't an absolutely formidable strength, but it left one in awe. This was because this sort of aura represented an extremely high level. To be able to break through the suppression of the shadow of betrayal meant that Qin Yu's actions represented at least the same level of will. The shadow of betrayal roared out in anger, asking who Qin Yu was. In truth, this was also what the mysterious mind and King Xuanzi wanted to know the most. But there was one thing that was without a doubt, and that was that Qin Yu had the qualifications to join forces with them, and he even had a slight advantage. The reason they used the word slightly was because there should be a limit to the aura that Qin Yu was releasing right now. Otherwise, he would have been able to directly eliminate the shadow of betrayal by himself. After all, a shadow was only a shadow in the end. If he could break through the suppression of the source aura of the will of the abyss, then his true strength wouldn't be too formidable. Qin Yu had gone to great lengths to pull the two of them into the nightmare ancestral land. From this, he had verified the limit just now. If it weren't for this, then so what if there were two true abyssal kings? If they were suppressed by an aura on the same level as the will of the abyss, then they could only fall into the fate of being trampled upon. The abyssal titan said in a low voice, "Two true kings. This junior cannot maintain this for long. I ask you to make your move." The mysterious mind and King Xuanzi took a deep breath. Without hesitation, they stepped forwards. Bang, bang, In that instant, their bodies wildly grew at a terrifying speed. In the blink of an eye, they turned into giants that were the same height as the shadow of betrayal. This was a true king of the abyss. After obtaining the approval of the will of the abyss and fusing with their bloodline, only then could they truly control the body of a true king. This was the strongest state of a true king of the abyss, but it was also their weakest moment. Once the body of a true king was damaged, it would cause the loss of their bloodline to exceed a certain limit. It might even cause their bloodline to collapse and their true king realm to shatter. Without hesitation, they directly displayed the body of a true king. This meant that the mysterious mind and King Xuanzi were truly going all out. Of course, this was also a declaration of their strength. It would let Qin Yu know that a true king was still a true king. Even if he controlled an extremely terrifying aura that could compare to the will of the abyss, it was still best not to have any thoughts about them. Otherwise, if two true kings joined forces and erupted, the consequences might not be something he could withstand. It had to be said that these two solemn, true kings of the abyss, especially those like the mysterious mind and King Xuanzi, were illustrious existences in the true king realm. But now, they had been reduced to revealing their strength to a demon commander level junior on their own initiative in order to ensure their own safety. This was truly a shameful matter. Die. You all deserve to die. The old turtle completely erupted. The more he feared death, the more he hated the mysterious mind and King Xuanzi who were trying to kill him. Of course, the one the old turtle hated the most was Qin Yu, who had transformed into an abyssal titan. If it weren't for this little thing, then even if these two true kings attacked, he still had enough confidence he could protect himself. In fact, he could even slowly grind these two true kings to death in the ancestral land and steal away the fused abyssal source energy within their bodies. After all, the ancestral land was the strongest turtle shell he had created for himself after spending countless years. Of course, it had more than just the ability to automatically recover. But now, Qin Yu had crippled most of his greatest reliance. The pressure of the will of the abyss was still present, but it was already difficult for it to have any substantial effect on the mysterious mind and King Xuanzi. The strength of these two true kings could erupt with a relatively complete strength. To the old turtle, the consequences were devastating. This was because a shadow was still a shadow. After losing the might of the will of the abyss, its strength wasn't tyrannical. At most, it could compare to an ordinary true king of the abyss. Facing the ferocious attacks of the mysterious mind and King Xuanzi's true king bodies, even protecting himself would be incomparably difficult. Bang, bang. A heaven-shaking explosion swept out in all directions. Incomparably wild fluctuations of strength recklessly swept out. The abyssal titan drew back a little. But the current ancestral land had already become a battlefield between the two true kings and the old turtle. It was inevitable that it would suffer an impact. Aura was just an aura. It didn't represent absolute strength. This was already mentioned before. Thus, even as they fought, the two true kings still paid a bit of attention to Qin Yu. But the result left them disappointed. This was because the terrifying strength that shook outwards wasn't able to cause any substantial damage to Qin Yu. The true body of the abyssal titan stood between the heavens and earth like a mountain. Without moving at all, those fluctuations of strength quietly vanished. It was like there was some incomparably terrifying will hidden within his body. It was so strong that not even true kings dared to provoke it in a battle. Seeing this scene, the dangerous thoughts in King Mysterious Strategy's hearts were finally concealed and dissipated. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.